Chapter 1405. When Yun Jian and Muing saw Lung Hanja and the others, Lung Hanja and the others also saw Yun Jian and Muing. The moment they saw Yun Jian and Muing, Lung Hanja and the others rushed over like crazy. Lung Hanja was afraid that Muing would shake him off again, so he rushed over and shouted at Muing, "Ying." When Lung Lingling saw Yun Jian and Muing, her face darkened. She ran over and scolded Yun Jian and Muing. "You actually abandoned us and ran away just now. How shameless. We came here together and we took care of you along the way, but what happened to you? You actually thought that you could fly a helicopter and left without waiting for us. How can there be such a shameless person in this world? I'm so angry." Lung Lingling's first sentence was directed at Yun Jian and Muing, and the second sentence was directed at Yun Jian. Lung Lingling was still frustrated. Just as she was about to say something else, Dan Qingjia's terrified voice rang. Dan Qingjia's fearful question was asked while looking at Yun Jian. "What's wrong with you? You know how to fly a helicopter. How old are you? You know how to fly a helicopter." Lung Lingling's casual words caused an uproar among Dan Qingjia's group of people. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked and couldn't react for a moment. Yun Jian knew how to fly a helicopter. That wasn't a car. It was a helicopter. A helicopter pilot had to learn for a few years before he could officially operate a helicopter, let alone fly one. "I'm a pilot. I accidentally saw this girl from Z country flying a helicopter." At this moment, a clean-looking foreign man with a high-nose bridge and brown hair spoke in English. Everyone present could speak English and their English was not bad. So when the foreign man spoke, everyone turned to look at Yun Jian. However, the foreign man who claimed to be a pilot exclaimed, and his tone was full of admiration for Yun Jian. "I've been flying for more than 10 years and I've seen many old pilots operate a helicopter. Today is the first time I've seen a girl operate a helicopter with such precision. This doesn't seem like something a teenage girl can do. Even my master, Captain Mitterrand, can't fly a helicopter so perfectly like her. She avoided the airflow and operated it smoothly without any turbulence." The foreign man who claimed to be a pilot had already reached the point of admiration for Yun Jian. When the people around them heard the foreign man's words, they were all stunned. Lung Lingling originally wanted to scold Yun Jian, but she didn't know that the people around her admired Yun even more. "What are you bragging about? Who knows if you're with her and purposely praising her?" Lung Lingling glared fiercely at Yun Jian, and just when she was about to refute, Yun Jian suddenly narrowed her eyes and she felt the slight change in the atmosphere. In the next second, the birds and beasts in the silent forest suddenly screamed and retreated as if they had met their natural enemy. "What's wrong?" Suddenly feeling the silence around her, and the chirping of the birds and beasts before they left, Lung Lingling was so scared that she trembled violently. Then she asked in fear. Just as he asked the question, a group of black people jumped out from all directions. These people were wearing clothes made of various animal skins. A few of them were bare-chested, and they held sharp wooden weapons in their hands. They surrounded Yun Jian and the others in the middle. When they saw these people, who jumped out from all directions, the people around them exclaimed. The tour guide even shouted in surprise. Chapter 1406. When the tour guide saw the group of savages suddenly rushing out of the forest, he was obviously shocked. There was one reason for this shock, and that was that this group of savages was actually called the Savages tribe. There wasn't much difference between the savages and ordinary humans, but there was one difference. Although the savages didn't look much different from ordinary humans, their way of life was completely different. The savages in the Savages tribe were used to wearing clothes made of animal fur. Even their weapons were the most primitive bows and long weapons. The Savages tribe had their own language of communication, and they were usually as ferocious as beasts. Although the tour guide knew that there was a Savages tribe somewhere in the Amazon forest, he was never worried about encountering savages. That was because the savages in the Savages tribe had their own territories. Other than a few Amazon forests, they would never enter other territories. They were the kings of the Amazon forest. They had their own territory in the Amazon forest. They would never leave their territory to look for food in other places and would never allow outsiders to enter their territory. If anyone trespassed into their territory, they would take the initiative to attack the humans who strayed into their territory. If the savages were so ferocious, why didn't they use modern firearms to subdue them? There was only one explanation for this problem, and that was that in the Amazon forest, these savages were the kings of the jungle. They were familiar with the terrain and knew how to use the terrain to avoid guns. They could even jump around freely like monkeys using the branches and vines of the forest. That was why guns could not hit the savages. Entering the Savages tribe was a huge taboo in the Amazon forest. The tour guide's job was to avoid the risk of entering the Savages tribe and bring the tourists to the Amazon forest. However, the savages who had never left their territory in the Savages tribe suddenly appeared here and surrounded them. It was obvious that they were not friendly. At that moment, even the tour guide did not know why. Go 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 go. The savages started talking in their own language after they appeared. Yun Jian squinted her eyes and did not move. Lung Lingling, who was scared out of her wits after hearing the tour guide's words, suddenly turned around and screamed, "I don't want to be eaten." She wanted to run but was knocked unconscious by a savage after taking 2 steps. Not long after, the dozens of people present were suppressed by this group of savages. Yun Jian and Muing did not resist. There were a lot of savages and they quickly tied up Yun Jian's group with vines and brought them to the tribe. It was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon when they were brought to the Savage tribe. Yun Jian and dozens of others were exposed to the sun. The group of savages grabbed their long weapons and rushed to the cave noisily. "What is this place? Will we be eaten?" Lung Lingling screamed as soon as she was put down. With Lung Lingling's shout, the dozens of people around her were immediately frightened. Their faces were extremely pale, and they were all worried about what would happen next. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and looked around. Her heart was slightly touched. This place was still the same as before. Nothing had changed. Just as he was thinking about this, he saw the group of savages surrounding an older savage walking out of the cave. The group of savages were talking in their own language with a ji-gu-gu sound. The older savage was obviously the leader of this group of savages. After the barbarian leader walked over, a few of the barbarians carried out a few large pots from the cave. Lung Lingling could not hold it in any more when she saw the pots. She said with tears flowing down her face, They are really going to eat us. I don't want to be eaten, I don't want to woo-woo." As she screamed, she struggled to break free from the vines but to no avail. The savages surrounded the leader of the savages and surrounded Yun Jian's group. At the same time, this group of savages was talking in a language that no one could understand. After a while, the pots were lit on fire. The size of the pots was just right to contain a living person. Seeing this, not only Lung Lingling, everyone screamed. However, the vines were very strong. No one could break free from the vines. The leader of the savages said something and there were already savages walking towards Yun Jian's group. Just as those savages were about to reach Yun Jian's group, Yun Jian suddenly shouted at the leader of the savages. Even if they were going to be eaten, there should be an order. With Yun Jian's shout, those savages immediately noticed Yun Jian's group. Lung Lingling and a few others were beside Yun Jian. Lung Lingling was already so scared that she did not dare to say a word. However, with Yun Jian's shout, she successfully attracted the attention of those savages. "Are you crazy? If you want to die, don't drag us down. If you want to die, go and die yourself." Lung Lingling cried and shouted at Yun Jian. The people around Yun Jian instantly hated Yun Jian. Thus, they all started to point out Yun Jian's faults. However, at this moment they saw the leader of the savages suddenly stop. Then he hesitated and actually walked towards Yun Jian. An even more shocking scene happened. The leader of the savages took 2 steps towards Yun Jian's side. He cried out in shock and then strode towards Yun Jian. When he was 3 meters away from Yun Jian, he knelt down. The leader of the savages stretched out his hand and knelt down heavily towards Yun Jian. The rest of the savages saw their leader kneeling down towards Yun Jian and they all followed. In the next moment, all of the savages knelt down towards Yun Jian. The scene was shocking and everyone who was with Yun Jian was in an uproar. Even the tour guide was dumbfounded when he saw this scene. Others might not know, but as a tour guide he was very clear. This group of savages had never bowed their heads to any humans. Any humans who accidentally entered their territory were like wanted criminals and would be hunted down by them. Usually, if one was kidnapped by the savages, the chances of survival were pitifully low. This group of savages were the kings of the jungle. They were familiar with the terrain and could use the terrain and years of wilderness survival experience to defeat any strong expert. However, today they knelt down towards a human. This was a strange thing that the tour guide had never heard of in his entire life. Thus the tour guide widened his eyes. The rest of the people who were with Yun Jian also widened their eyes. They were so shocked that they could not be described with words. Every pair of eyes stared at Yun Jian. It was as if they wanted an explanation and wanted to know what was going on. Why are they all kneeling towards Yun Jian? This is impossible. She's not their king? Aren't savages only going to listen to the king that they think is the most powerful? What? Could it be? Could it be that Yun Jian is their king? Dan Qingjie was so shocked that his eyeballs were about to fall out. Chapter 1407. The world of the barbarians followed the law of survival in the jungle, where the strong ruled. Before entering this place, there was an introduction about the barbarians on the tour group's billboards. The reason why the tour group knew so much about the barbarians was because they had successfully captured a barbarian 3 months ago. Now, this barbarian was brought to a nearby research facility for research and observation. The world of the barbarians did not need the weak, where the strong ruled. A group of barbarians would form a tribe, just like this group of barbarians in the tribe. They would choose the strongest and most powerful barbarian to be the king of their tribe. Normally, the status of this barbarian in their tribe was similar to that of an emperor in ancient times. Unless you could defeat this king and take over the throne, otherwise the barbarians in the tribe would listen to whatever the king said. This was the law of survival in the barbarians' tribe, where the strong ruled. This was stated on the tour guide's banner at the entrance, so everyone who stood here paid attention to it out of curiosity. But now, this group of barbarians who followed the law of survival actually knelt down in front of Yun Jian under the lead of the barbarian who was obviously the leader of this group of barbarians. What did this mean? Oh my god, these barbarians are kneeling down to us humans? This is a strange story, I have never heard of it before. The barbarians in the tribe are very strict about survival in the jungle, they would never listen to the weak, not to mention kneeling down to a human. The tour guide was stunned, he stared blankly at the scene in front of him which scared him out of his wits. He even regained his senses from the fear of being cooked alive by the barbarians just a moment ago. At this moment, everyone was staring blankly at Yun Jian. They watched as Yun Jian accepted the worship of the barbarians, but she did not show any signs of surprise. However, Yun Jian's expression was normal as she stared at the group of barbarians kneeling down in front of her. Yun Jian, what is going on? He Liqing was holding the 3 blades she took from Yun Jian. She moved closer to Yun Jian and asked. At this moment, everyone present was tied up by vines. Just as He Liqing moved closer to Yun Jian and asked, she saw Yun Jian tear apart the vines binding her body like she was holding a pair of scissors, then stood up. Yun Jian did not answer He Liqing's question, instead she took 2 steps towards the group of barbarians who were kneeling down in front of her. After Yun Jian let go of the vines binding her, Muing also let go of the vines and stood up. Yun Jian and Muing looked as if they were not tied up by the vines at all. This scene frightened everyone around. Because Yun Jian and Muing were indeed tied up just now. Therefore, the current situation could only be explained by the fact that the vines binding them were not a problem at all. Hey you guys! Hurry up and untie us. Seeing that Yun Jian and Muing had broken free from the ropes, Lung Lingling felt uncomfortable being tied up by the vines. So she shouted at Yun Jian and Mu Ying's backs in a delicate manner. Lung Lingling had just shouted until here when she saw that Yun Jian did not respond to her. Instead, she strode forward and walked to where the leader of the barbarians was kneeling in front of her. Without saying anything, she walked over and viciously kicked the barbarian leader's abdomen, sending him flying 3 meters away on the spot. That way it was as if she was punishing her own subordinates. Then, Yun Jian said a few words in the barbarian language in front of everyone. Her tone was rather fierce, scaring the group of barbarians until they started trembling. This scene shocked the crowd once again. Then she turned around to look at everyone and finally locked her gaze on the tour guide. Yunjian, you actually know how to speak in the barbarian language. Who are you? Lung Hanja looked at Yunjian in a daze and asked. Yunjian, who was asked the crux of the matter, smiled faintly, but said something that shocked everyone present. I've been in the Amazon forest for half a year. If I can't even discipline my own subordinates in half a year, how can I deserve to be called king by them? Subordinates she was referring to. Chapter 1408. You can say that. Yunjian said as she walked in front of the tour guide. Standing in front of the tour guide, Yunjian looked down at the tour guide who was still tied up by the vines. Then she asked the tour guide, "Where is the research facility? Where is the barbarian that you captured?" Although Yunjian's words were a question, it didn't seem like she was asking a question. Instead, it sounded like she was interrogating the tour guide. The tour guide trembled. Perhaps it was because Yunjian's kick that sent the barbarian leader flying was too ruthless. The tour guide was a little scared. He quickly said, "It's in a building 200 meters away from the entrance of the Amazon forest. There is an Amazon forest wildlife research facility there. The barbarians that were captured earlier were also kept there for tourists to enjoy." The tour guide lost his confidence in the end. If the tour guide didn't guess wrongly, the reason why Yunjian chose to follow the tour group was because she saw the description of the barbarian that was just captured on the tour group at the entrance. The truth was that Yunjian followed the tour group because she saw the description of the barbarian that was captured and kept in the research facility. It was even kept for tourists to enjoy. The barbarian tribe actually owed Yunjian a favor in the past. When she first entered the Amazon forest, Yunjian didn't know anything. Later on, she accidentally entered the barbarian tribe. Because of Yunjian's strength, the barbarians couldn't do anything to her. After following this group of barbarians, Yunjian quickly learned how to survive in a natural environment like the Amazon forest. Later on, Yunjian directly became the queen of the barbarian tribe. She was very clear that if she wanted to be the queen, the least she could do was not allow her subordinates to be bullied, especially when it was kept for tourists to enjoy. This was something that Yunjian couldn't tolerate. That was why Yunjian joined the tour group to find out more information. As for why the barbarians left their own territory to attack the humans, it was because after the previous barbarian was captured, the barbarians who had a collective consciousness wanted to find their companion that was captured. In fact, because the barbarian was captured by humans, the group of barbarians hated humans. Just now, this group of savages really wanted to cook and eat Yunjian and her group alive. And because Yunjian had changed so much, the group of savages did not recognize Yunjian at all. After all, Yunjian was still very young when she stayed in the Amazon forest for 6 months. Her physical body was still that of her previous life. "Take me to the Wildlife Research Institute now," Yunjian said to the tour guide. As soon as Yunjian spoke, the tour guide looked a little embarrassed. The tour guide was here to lead the way. If he returned to the exit, wouldn't Rin Zhongwei, Dan Qingjie and the other tourists have to follow him back? "It's fine if you don't leave, but you can stay and be their dinner." Yunjian pointed at the savages not far away. Now no one dared to say that they didn't want to leave. Everyone was fighting to leave. Therefore, the group quickly untied the vines and walked towards the entrance of the Amazon forest. There was still some distance to the entrance of the Amazon forest. Yunjian had too many secrets, so the tour guide couldn't help but ask Yunjian as they walked, "You said you stayed in the Amazon forest for half a year?" "Yeah." Yunjian replied coldly. The tour guide gulped. Before he could ask again, a foreign man who knew Chinese spoke up. "I heard that many assassin and secret agent organizations would throw their assassins or secret agents into the Amazon forest and let them survive for half a year without any weapons. It's a game where the weak are eliminated and the winner is the king. Could it be that you were thrown into the Amazon forest as a secret agent or an assassin?" Chapter 1409. After all, why would a normal girl come all the way to the Amazon forest for half a year? Let's not talk about whether her family would agree or not. A normal girl might not even know what kind of place the Amazon forest was, right? In 1999, the internet was not widely known yet, and there was no way to search for information on the internet. People in that era could only find out about major international news through newspapers, television, and other channels. As for a place like the Amazon forest, even adults might not know about it. Yunjian was from Country Z, and Country Z was far from the Amazon forest, so the foreign man who spoke Chinese had to ask Yunjian about it. The people around them suddenly heard the foreign man saying something they had never heard of before, so they all turned around to look. The foreign man stared at Yunjian for 2 seconds. It was obvious that this foreign man had some understanding of secret agents and assassins. No comment. Yun Jian's words interrupted the foreign man's train of thought and he rolled his eyes. Okay, I won't ask any more. Can I ask for your name? Alright, before I ask for your name I'll tell you mine first. My name is Bala, I'm from country G. After the foreign man named Bala introduced himself to Yun Jian, he walked side by side with Yun Jian while looking at Yun Jian. It seemed like he wanted to get her name from Yun Jian. Yun Jian, she said briefly, there was nothing to hide. Oh, Yun Jian, that's a nice Chinese name. Bala praised after hearing it. Yun Jian did not reply after that. On the other hand, Lung Lingling, who was beside Lung Hanja, was very interested when she heard Bala talk about secret agents and assassins. Guo, who was with Lung Hanja, was a police academy student, so he was very interested in such things as well. Hence, Guo and Lung Lingling started talking to Bala very quickly. Lung Lingling especially, she had never heard of secret agents and assassins, so she started chatting happily with Bala. Do secret agents and assassins really exist in this world? I always thought that they only existed in movies. Lung Lingling said to Bala longingly. Bala laughed heartily and then said to Lung Lingling, of course it exists. And it's very likely that it's right next to you. When he said this, Bala seemed to be deep in thought. His gaze even drifted slightly. Really? Lung Lingling shrunk back in fear. She swallowed her saliva and asked Bala cautiously, how did you know all this? I specifically looked into it, Bala said with a smile. Lung Lingling, Guo, and Bala's laughter could be heard along the way. Yun Jian and Mu Ying, who were walking at the front, remained calm and collected. Lu Yun's leg was bitten by the piranhas. At this moment, because she was anesthetized, she was supported by someone to move forward. For the time being, there was no fatal pain. At this moment, Lung Lingling, who was standing behind Yun Jian, once again asked Bala with an expectant tone, then who is the best secret agent or assassin in this world? Do you know? Hearing Lung Lingling's question, Bala paused for a moment before answering Lung Lingling seriously. At the same time, his tone became solemn. If you ask who is the best secret agent or assassin in this world, it's none other than the #1 secret agent, slaying God. Hearing the two words slaying God, even Lung Lingling, who had always ignored Yun Jian, could not help but become more solemn. When the people around them heard the two words, they paused in their steps as well. However, Bala's words were heard again. Slaying God, the #1 secret agent on the secret agent ranking, is the best secret agent in this world. She's the only secret agent who has escaped the control of an Hun organization. At the same time, she's also the true king of completing missions with a success rate of 100%. Chapter 14:10. Lung Lingling's tone was cautious when she asked the question, as if she was afraid that she might have asked something she should not have. In Lung Lingling's opinion, Bala must be an outstanding talent to know about such a powerful character. Therefore, Lung Lingling's attitude toward Bala was filled with obvious admiration. Yes, she's definitely the most powerful character on the secret agent and assassin leaderboard. Bala nodded solemnly at Lung Lingling. Oh yeah, who's the Hun organization that you mentioned earlier? Guo asked, catching on to a detail that Bala had mentioned earlier. Bala patiently explained to Guo as soon as Guo opened his mouth to ask. The Inhun organization is the world's top assassin organization. Its position is on par with the Kosha mercenaries. If you accidentally offend the Inhun organization or the Kosha mercenaries internationally, you'll be hunted down and killed. Even the people on the secret agent or assassin leaderboard are powerless against them. Bala was very patient when it came to secret agents and assassins. It was rare to meet someone who was interested in secret agents and assassins. Bala could not wait to tell Lung Lingling and Guo everything that she knew. Then, does that include the most powerful slaying god that you mentioned earlier? Lung Lingling's tone was filled with admiration when she mentioned slaying god. It was as if she was talking about someone whom she admired the most. Lung Lingling's tone even became cautious. Ever since Bala, Lung Lingling and Guo mentioned slaying god, Yun Jian's ears kept ringing. Yun Jian listened but did not say a word. However, Bala continued, "No. Slaying god is an exception. I think even if slaying god offended the Inhun organization, they won't be able to take her down. As for the Kosha mercenaries that I mentioned earlier, they're slaying god's own force." Lung Lingling and Guo could not help but gasp when they heard what Bala said. Toward the end, Bala lamented, "I think slaying god's achievements today are all thanks to her innate talent. That's how she got to where she is now so easily. Her talent is really enviable." Bala's lament made Lung Lingling and Guo fall silent. At this moment, Yun Jian suddenly snorted coldly. She secretly laughed and said, "Extraordinary talent? How did he reach his current position so easily? She was only able to get to where she is today by luck." She was referring to slaying God in his past life. What do you know? You're just an ordinary military schoolgirl. Do you really think that you're slaying God, the top secret agent on the secret agent ranking? You keep talking about it. I think you're just jealous of slaying God's prowess. He's jealous? Yun Jian had just finished speaking when Lung Lingling continued. Yun Jian didn't want to pay attention to this. Yun Jian just took another step forward. At this moment, no one noticed that Bala, who was standing behind Yun Jian, had found the spot closest to Yun Jian. He suddenly clenched his fist and charged toward Yun Jian. His fist was about to land on Yun Jian. No one expected such a turn of events. While everyone was still in shock, they saw Yun Jian, who was walking in front, turn sideways reflexively. She reached out and turned her fist at lightning speed. In the next second, her fist collided with Bala's sneak attack. However, that was not the end. The moment Yun Jian's fist collided with Bala's, her hand snaked nimbly around Bala's wrist like a snake's body. In less than 3 seconds, Yun Jian had grasped Bala's weak spot. With a tug, she pinned Bala's hand down and used the force of her hand to pin Bala to the ground. This turn of events did not take more than 5 seconds. 5 seconds. Before anyone could react, Yun Jian had already subdued Bala, who had ambushed her, and ended the battle. When everyone realized what had happened, they were dumbfounded. No one expected Yun Jian to be so agile. Chapter 14:11. Bala's tone was eerie when he said that. It was completely different from how he looked at slaying God with admiration earlier. Everyone was dumbfounded by the turn of events. Especially when Bala was attacking Yun Jian at a ferocious speed but was subdued by Yun Jian, everyone was dumbfounded. Slaying God? The slaying God you're talking about? Is she the one you told us about earlier? Lung Lingling's eyes widened. When the incident happened, Lung Lingling's eyes were wider than anyone else's. She stared at Yun Jian and Bala blankly, asking in disbelief. Isn't she Yun Jian? How could she be? Guo asked in horror. He shook his head and stared at Bala and Yun Jian. He wanted to know the truth. Their instincts told them that the slaying God that Bala mentioned earlier really existed in this world. However, that person was Yun Jian right in front of them? This was something that no one present was willing to believe. However, even if they did not believe it, they were still dumbfounded. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She grabbed Bala, but before she could speak, Bala had already turned his head to the side. Although Yun Jian held his hand, Bala still spoke to Lung Lingling, Guo, Lung Hanja, and the rest. How is that possible? How is that not possible? Didn't you see it clearly earlier? She captured me in an instant. I don't know anyone in this world who can capture me in an instant other than slaying God. Bala cackled and continued, I'm the second assassin on the assassin chart, Janice. Since I started my career, I've only met one opponent, and that person is slaying God. As he spoke, Bala stretched out his free hand and placed it on his face. He gently tore at a line along the contours of his face. Then that familiar face was directly peeled off. Lung Lingling saw Bala tear her face off, and she took 2 steps back in fright. What Bala, who was also Janice, did not surprise her. It was obvious that Yun Jian knew that Janice had changed his appearance. She also knew that Janice's face was covered by a human skin mask. However, even if Yun Jian had seen through this, she was not a god and did not know Janice's identity. Yun Jian didn't know until this moment, but she didn't appear to be very surprised. She had wanted to deny her identity as slaying God earlier, but Janice seemed to have known what she was planning to do. Before she could say a word, he had cut off all excuses to deny her identity. Yun Jian's lips curved into a red arc. Yun Jian was no stranger to Janice. Janice, who was ranked second on the assassin ranking, was indeed a powerful character. He was good at tracking and counter-tracking. In her previous life, Yun Jian had encountered Janice before, and it was Janice who came to her and was beaten up by her. Therefore, Yun Jian was not surprised that Janice recognized her. Yun Jian. You. It's impossible. How can you be the slaying God who is ranked first on the assassin ranking? Slaying God should be a great and powerful character. How can it be you? Lung Lingling did not believe it, and she would not believe it either. The people around them looked at Yun Jian in disbelief. Everyone thought so. After all, Yun Jian was still young. I'm afraid you're the only one in this world who came to me to be beaten up. Janice, it's been a long time. Yun Jian's lips curved into a red arc. Everyone was shocked and in disbelief when she said that calmly. Especially when she said long time no see, it could be considered as a direct admission of her identity. Lung Lingling, Guo, Lung Hanja, and the rest were dumbfounded. Was she not a student from Min City's military school? Chapter 14:12. Yun Jian ignored the crowd's reaction. After Yun Jian finished her sentence, she released her grip on Janice. At the same time, she extended her leg. Before Janice could react, she kicked Janice's waist in the back, causing him to stumble forward. Janice was not an ordinary person. After being kicked by Yun Jian, he staggered 2 steps forward before regaining his footing. He turned around, wiped the corner of his mouth, and looked at Yun Jian. Slaying God, the number 1 on the international secret agent ranking, is among this group of useless people. I didn't expect that. Jiske. Janice stared back at Yun Jian without backing down as he spoke. Did he just call everyone present a group of useless people? The crowd had just recovered from their shock. After hearing what Janice said, they were all furious. However, no one dared to voice their anger. Janice claimed to be the number 2 assassin on the assassin ranking. An assassin. That was someone who could kill. Moreover, he was the number 2 assassin on the assassin ranking. Tell me what you want. Yun Jian stood calmly on the spot. She narrowed her eyes and looked lazy, but she was more alert than everyone present. Janice was not someone who was easy to control. He was completely different from Mad Dragon and Peter. How could the number 2 assassin on the assassin ranking be a weakling? If he was a weakling, the number 2 assassin ranking would definitely not belong to him. After all, There was a huge difference between the top 3 assassins or secret agents on the assassin ranking and the top 10 assassins or secret agents on the ranking. In other words, anyone who could climb to the top 3 would be an all-powerful and fearsome existence in the entire world who heard of their names. I don't have any other intentions. I just want to ask you for a favor. Janice did not beat around the bush and asked Yun Jian directly in front of the stunned crowd. Initially, the crowd thought that since Yun Jian was also a powerful character, she would definitely reach an agreement with Janice, who was equally powerful. After all, it was common knowledge to have one more friend and one less enemy. Just when everyone thought that Yun Jian would gladly agree to Janice's request and even befriend him, she spoke abruptly, "You're right. You have to know that with your skills, you don't have the right to ask for a favor from me." Yun Jian's words were laced with arrogance. The crowd was stunned. However, Janice continued to speak to Yun Jian, "TSK. In that case, we'll have to face each other head-on." With that, Janice reached out and took out a Browning pistol from the travel bag that he had been carrying along. Janice held the pistol in his hand and pointed the muzzle at Yun Jian. When the crowd saw the Browning pistol, they all became restless. "Gun. It's a gun." The one who reacted the most was Lung Lingling. The moment Lung Lingling saw the pistol, she screamed and wanted to run away. Lung Hanja, Guoxiao, Lu Yun, He Liqing, Dan Qingjie, Ren Zhongwei, and the others wanted to run away. However, they heard Yun Jian's voice that was not at a disadvantage. "Do you think you can defeat me with just a gun?" Yun Jian's voice was light. However, when she spoke, everyone was shocked. Chapter 14-13. Although Janice's achievements in the underworld were not as good as slaying gods, there was no doubt that Janice was one of the best in the underworld. His achievements were second only to slaying gods. Although his ability was not as good as slaying gods, his achievements in completing missions were close to slaying gods. If slaying God was the king of the underworld, as soon as Janice was undoubtedly the king's best fist had already landed in front of no one else. Everyone's achievements were not something that could be erased by a single person's handsome face get beaten up. After all, he was not an ordinary assassin, but an elite fair and slender hands caught Janice's fist easily. However, this was only limited to the ordinary. He lifted his slender leg and kicked Janice away at lightning speed. How can my achievements be reduced to nothingness just because you say so? Janice circled the forest a few times but could not find the person who had spoken. Janice pointed at He frowned and began to be cautious of his surroundings. The only person who can be faster than slaying God, there was someone else who could speak right under his nose and he could not find the air as he sprinted forward. No matter who this person was, Janice dared not let his guard down. Abdomen and destroyed his internal organs on the spot. The mellow voice was just died violently in front of everyone. It was so magnetic that anyone who saw this was so shocked that their faces just by listening to his voice. Lung Lingling almost no doubt that it belonged to him. CE, who was on the other end, did not even take his hands out of his pockets. Yun Jian had initially planned for CE to arrive a day later in disgust. Yun Jian did not know that your military had rushed here so quickly, but you'll be reduced to nothingness if you dare to lay your hands on my woman. What's the point of hiding? Come out if you dare. 14. What do you mean by your woman? Janice was an unexpected character to begin with. Did I lay my hands on? Did not plan to get rid of him. Jenny's eyes she even had the thought of roping him into the kosher mercenaries to show himself. After all, in fact, if someone like Janice were to join the kosher mercenaries, in the next second, the kosher mercenaries' forces would definitely double. Wasn't that CE? Ever since the kosher mercenaries had gotten rid of Janice coldly earlier, the previous kosher mercenaries' boss, he had hidden himself so well that Janice had been completely eliminated as well. CE jumped down from the tree handsomely. The consequence of this was that the kosher mercenaries' trousers had yet to be reorganized for quite presented to the crowd. Therefore, Yun Jian's favorite of short hair now was to rope so black that people couldn't take their eyes off it. However, coupled with that handsome face that angered both men and gods, a hand appeared around her waist. Even Janice felt that something was wrong and pressed himself against Yun Jian, and he felt an inexplicable tremble in his body. However, he was the number 2 assassin on the international assassin ranking. Yun Jian asked with a frown. The kid in front of him looked to be at most 20 years darkened at the question. When he came out of the underworld, isn't it better to kill him? The other party was still drinking milk. I wanted to invite him to join the kosher mercenaries. Thinking of this, Yun Jian became her intention. Who are you? Xiao Jian, as long as you have the right to speak, the entire and Hun group will be clenched yours. Fist was already swinging at CE as he spoke. Could not hold himself back and murmured softly against Yun Jian's earlobe. Noisy. Of course, these were all whispers between Yun Jian and CE. The people around them could only see CE killing Janice and walking to Yun Jian to lean against her. Other than that, they could not see anything else. CE's words made Yun Jian blush. She nudged CE quickly and thought of something else. Where's Mad Dragon? Over there. How could he not listen to his wife and bring Mad Dragon over? CE pointed in that direction. Yun Jian turned to look and saw Mad Dragon sauntering over lazily. Yun Jian could clearly see that Mu Ying, who was standing not far away, froze when she saw Mad Dragon. Mu Ying was still young when she died. She was only about 9 years old. Mad Dragon was still young back then as well. A person's appearance would change with age, but a person's silhouette would not change much. This was why some people could tell whose childhood photo it was at a glance. The moment Mu Ying saw Mad Dragon, she was stupefied. Of a sudden, she realized that she was no longer who she used to be. She did not even have a body. She was only left with a consciousness. This consciousness was transferred to this little girl by the perverted professor back then. Right now, he was like a walking corpse. What right did she have to see him? Lung Hanja could clearly see the change in Mu Ying's expression when she saw Mad Dragon. He felt very uneasy. Ying. Lung Hanja looked at Mu Ying. He wanted to help Mu Ying up, but Mu Ying did not let him touch her and ran into the depths of the forest. Mad Dragon, who was standing far away, felt Mu Ying's gaze. He suddenly retracted his lazy posture. When he glanced at Mu Ying, he felt a sense of familiarity. Yun Jian knew that Mad Dragon and Mu Ying had a relationship when they were in the organization. After Mu Ying died, Mad Dragon killed the group of people who had tricked him into going out. He could not make it back in time to save Mu Ying. To this day, Mad Dragon did not have any women by his side. Not a single one. Ever since Mu Ying died, Mad Dragon's world was only filled with killing, killing, and killing. He only knew how to use killing to numb himself. Yun Jian suddenly walked in front of Mad Dragon. She signaled to Mad Dragon that Mu Ying had run away and said, "Do you still remember MY?" Yun Jian did not point it out, but Mad Dragon suddenly realized something. In the next second, Mad Dragon ran madly towards Mu Ying. Mu Ying ran as fast as she could. Her strength had stagnated at the age of 9. She did not give up on training after her consciousness was sucked into this body by the perverted professor. However, she knew that she was no longer a complete person, and she was not worthy of meeting Mad Dragon. She did not even have her own body. Mu Ying ran faster and faster. In the end, she didn't even notice the vines on the ground. She was tripped by the vines and fell to the ground, but she didn't feel pain. She just sat on the ground and silently let her tears flow. She did not know why she was crying. "My silly girl, I have been looking for you for more than 10 years. You are still as silly as before." Suddenly, a soft male voice came from behind. Mu Ying paused. She knew who the male voice was, but she did not dare to turn around. However, she felt the owner of the male voice squat down and hugged her from behind. He pulled her up from the ground with one hand and then pulled her into his arms. Chapter 14-15. After Mad Dragon finished speaking, Mu Ying's body trembled even more. It was a feeling of agitation, excitement, happiness, and despair. She didn't know what to say, and neither did Mad Dragon. The two of them stood there in a daze. Mad Dragon hugged her and didn't move an inch. It wasn't until the sound of footsteps came from behind her and a furious male voice rang out that everything was stopped. This furious male voice came from the mouth of the boy she had been familiar with for more than 10 years, but had never fallen in love with. "Who are you? Let go of my Ying." After Yun Jian saw Mu Ying running away, Mad Dragon chased after her. In the end, Lung Hanja chased after her as well. After Lung Hanja chased after her, Lung Lingling, Guo and the rest all ran after her. The only people left standing were Dan Qingjie and the two groups of tourists. When Yun Jian saw this, she also ran over. Before she ran over, she said to Ce, "I'll go take a look." After Yun Jian went over, Ce scanned the scene with a pair of sharp eyes. Then she left with Yun Jian, "I'll kill whoever dares to come over." Coupled with the sight of Janice's corpse on the ground, everyone's legs stiffened. At this moment, no one dared to follow them. However, they didn't dare to leave this place on their own. After all, this was the Amazon forest. Coupled with the danger they had encountered previously, this group of people could only stand there and wait for Yun Jian to return. When Yun Jian arrived, she saw Lung Hanja looking at Mad Dragon hugging Mu Ying. He roared at Mad Dragon, "Who are you? Let go of my Ying," and rushed forward. Lung Lingling, who was standing behind Lung Hanja, shouted at Lung Hanja's back, "Brother!" Then she glared hatefully at Mu Ying, who was being hugged by Mad Dragon from behind. "It's all her fault. It was all her fault. Go to hell. Why don't a fickle woman like you go to hell? My brother has been chasing you for so many years. If you were a human, you would have responded to him long ago. What about you? Not only did you not respond to him, but you even hugged another man. How shameless." Lung Lingling didn't give any face to Mu Ying and cursed her with all kinds of words. Just as Lung Hanja was about to run forward and try to pull Mad Dragon away from Mu Ying's waist, Mad Dragon suddenly reached out a hand and grabbed Lung Hanja's collar. Lung Hanja was thrown far away. "Brother! Brother! You two are having an affair. Shameless." Lung Lingling saw her brother Lung Hanja being thrown out. She was so angry that she wanted to rush over. Lung Lingling wanted to rush forward, but she was caught by Yun Jian. Yun Jian grabbed Lung Lingling's collar and slapped her 3 times. Slap, slap, slap. The 3 slaps were exceptionally loud in the silent forest. When Lung Lingling came back to her senses, she glared at Yun Jian angrily. "How dare you hit me? Why wouldn't I dare to hit you? Your brother's feelings for Mu Ying are just one-sided. Does she have to be with your brother just because he likes her?" Yun Jian scoffed. "No, no. Ying and I are from the same world. Since we were young, everyone around us said that we're a match made in heaven. Moreover, we're both from military families, so we're the best match. He's a despicable person. He's a despicable person." Lung Hanja was in pain, but he endured it and got up from the ground. He pointed at Mad Dragon and said hatefully. Yun Jian laughed when she heard that. She sneered and asked Lung Hanja, "Do you know who I am?" Lung Hanja, Lung Lingling, and the rest only reacted when they heard Yun Jian's question. She was a secret agent. The kind that could kill. Moreover, she was the #1 secret agent on the International Secret Agent ranking, slaying God. Just as they thought that, they heard Yun Jian say with a smirk, "She's the same as I am. She, who once lived a life of war, will never be from the same world as you." Yun Jian's words stunned Lung Hanja and Lung Lingling. "What? Mu Ying?" Chapter 14:16. They would never be from the same world? Is Mu Ying was also a secret agent? Lung Hanja was stunned. He had never thought of this possibility. Lung Hanja was already shocked when he found out that Yun Jian was the #1 secret agent on the secret agent ranking list. He never expected Yun Jian to say that he and Mu Ying would never be from the same world. Because was she the same as Yun Jian? No. That's impossible. Ying has always been by my side since I was young. She never left me. How could she be the kind of person you're talking about? I don't believe it. You're that kind of person yourself. Don't compare my Ying to you. Lung Hanja loved Mu Ying to the point of insanity. He didn't believe Yun Jian's words at all. He even yelled at Yun Jian. Yun Jian chuckled at Lung Hanja's words. Mu Ying stood up and let go of Mad Dragon's embrace. She stopped Yun Jian. "Yun Jian, this is my problem. I'll settle it myself." Mu Ying had recovered from the tense atmosphere. "Okay." Yun Jian nodded and stood beside Ce, who had just walked over. Lung Hanja looked at Mu Ying with pleading eyes, as if he wanted to get the answer he wanted. But Muing said, Yunjian is right. I'm not the real Muing. I'm just a wisp of consciousness. The real Muing died in a car accident when she was young. Do you still remember that crazy doctor? He was the one who injected my consciousness into the dead Muing. As for me, I was just a nameless assassin in the Inhun organization back then. I was once abducted into the organization along with hundreds of other children. I lived an ignoble existence in the cruel world. In the end, my limbs were cut off, my heart was dug out while I was still alive, and I was a pitiful little girl who was torn apart by wolves and dogs. Your Muing, your beloved Muing, is dead. Mu Ying's words hit the nail on the head. Lung Hanja was stunned by Mu Ying's words. He couldn't believe it, and he didn't dare to imagine that the girl he had loved since he was a child had changed halfway through. You're lying to me. Lung Hanja shouted at Mu Ying like a madman. Mu Ying stopped breathing after the car accident. I was the one who came back to life when she was buried, so she's already dead. I am me, I am what? Mu Ying suddenly raised her voice. This made Lung Hanja completely believe him, and his mind was in a mess. If that was the case, then what was he? Did he love the young Mu Ying or the current Mu Ying? What was he after? Lung Hanja sat on the ground, completely paralyzed. How did you die? Cut off your limbs? Dug out your heart? Torn apart by wolves and dogs? This is a lawful society. How could such a cruel thing happen? Lung Lingling didn't care if Lung Hanja believed it or not. Lung Lingling's focus wasn't on the fact that Mu Ying was no longer the Mu Ying she used to be. Lung Lingling, Guoxiao and the others were just normal students after all. They had never heard of such a horrifying way of dying. Not to mention that such a horrifying person was standing right in front of them. Lung Lingling felt a chill run down her spine. Mu Ying didn't reply to Lung Lingling, but Yun Jian did. Yun Jian smirked and told Lung Lingling, "You're right." Chapter 14-17. Lung Lingling and this group of obedient girls who were protected in the arms of their parents would never be able to understand how they, who lived in this cruel and murderous world, managed to survive. Perhaps to them, the best life wasn't that tomorrow would be better than today, but that tomorrow they were still alive, that they weren't dead yet. Hearing Yun Jian's serious words, Lung Lingling gulped. She was sure that the current Mu Ying was no longer the Mu Ying of the past. After all, Mu Ying was her best friend when they were young. Ever since Muing got into a car accident when they were young, she changed. She often hid in a corner and ignored her and her brother, Lung Hanja. From then on, Lung Lingling hated Muing. Perhaps Lung Lingling didn't hate Muing back then. She just didn't want to play with Muing anymore. Later on, Muing refused to be with her brother, Lung Hanja. Seeing how her brother did so much for Muing but didn't get anything in return, Muing started to hate Muing. Lung Lingling believed it when she got the answer. The Muing of the past and Muing after the car accident were too different. But Lung Hanja was different. He didn't believe it because he didn't want to accept the truth. Is the world you live in really that scary? Lung Lingling muttered after hearing Yun Jian's words. Yun Jian ignored Lung Lingling this time and smiled coldly. Yun Jian, we. Muing, who was standing not far away, signaled Yun Jian. Yun Jian saw Mu Ying's signal and suddenly realized something. Then Yun Jian walked towards Lung Lingling. Muing walked towards Lung Hanja. Seeing Muing walking towards him, Lung Hanja thought that his Ying was back. Ying, are you planning to? Before Lung Hanja could finish his sentence, Muing appeared in front of Lung Hanja and knocked him unconscious with a horizontal slash. Brother. You guys. Lung Lingling was so shocked by the sudden turn of events that she let out a cry. Just as she spoke, she was knocked unconscious by Yun Jian. Lung Hanja and the others fainted. These people's memories could not be kept, especially since they already knew that Yun Jian was the top secret agent in the international secret agent ranking, slaying God. After the group of people were knocked unconscious, Yun Jian took out 3 bottles of chemical solvent from her bag. The liquid in these bottles was a new liquid called the 3-hour amnesia liquid that Qing Yu had recently developed. As long as a person drank a little of this liquid, they would forget everything that happened 3 hours ago. This was Qing Yu's latest product and it was one of a kind in the world. She did not sell it but gave Yun Jian 3 bottles. Yun Jian's identity as the top secret agent ranking, slaying God, was exposed. Not only would Lung Hanja and the rest have to forget about it, even the group of people who came with the tour group would have to forget about it. Therefore, after knocking out Lung Hanja and the rest, Yun Jian gave each of them a drop of the amnesia liquid. She then got Mad Dragon to knock out everyone in the tour group and gave each of them the 3-hour amnesia liquid. They were very close to the entrance of the Amazon forest, so they were not afraid that no one would notice them if they were knocked out. Yun Jian only used 1/3 of the 3-hour amnesia liquid from one of the 3 bottles. By the time Yun Jian rescued the savage from the Wildlife Research Institute nearby and brought him back to the tribe, it was already evening. Lung Hanja and the rest, including Dan Qingjie and the tour group, were all knocked out. It was obvious that they had forgotten everything that happened 3 hours ago. Chapter 14-18. They did not find the old man who had saved Muing back then, so Yun Jian, Muing, and the others returned to Min City. Mu-Ying was saved by the old man when she entered the Amazon forest. If it were not for him, Mu-Ying would not have been able to survive 6 months in the Amazon forest with her ability back then. Yun Jian, on the other hand, had survived there for 6 months with her own ability. Compared to Yun Jian, Mu-Ying's ability was indeed weaker. It was also evident that Yun Jian was one of a kind to be able to survive 6 months in the Amazon forest with her age back then. Mu-Ying was grateful to the old man for saving her life back then, but she still could not find him even after walking around the Amazon forest and nearly turning over the soil on the ground. In the end, Mu-Ying could only accept her fate and return to Min City. Mu-Ying went back to Min City while Yun Jian went back to Longmen City. Mu-Ying went to Min City with Mad Dragon as well. Although Mu-Ying felt that she was not good enough for Mad Dragon now, she could not bear to chase Mad Dragon away, so both of them went back together. Yun Jian went back to Longmen City with Ce. After staying in Longmen City for 3 to 4 days, the 7-day break after the military training was over. Yun Jian was ready to head back to Min City's military academy for class. Ce did not have time to accompany Yun Jian to class, but before Yun Jian left, he hugged Yun Jian and let Yun Jian sit on his lap affectionately for a while. "Xiao Jian, I can't get away for a while. Come to Anhan for me later." In the room, Ce hugged Yun Jian's slim waist, refusing to let her go. He let Yun Jian sit on his lap and pressed his lips to Yun Jian's ear softly. Yun Jian was numb from Ce's breath, but she dared not move. She was pinned down by Ce, so she could only curl up and take it. She dared not move because she was sitting on his lap. Yun Jian was wearing a short white skirt and a pair of panties today. Ce's pants were so thin that it was as if he was wearing nothing. She was so shy that her face turned red. "Let go of me, I have to catch the bus. I'll be late for class." Yun Jian pushed Ce as she blushed. "No." He spoke even more boldly. As he spoke, he placed his slender hand on her smooth thigh under her short skirt and gently rubbed it. "Xiao Jian, you're so beautiful." Ce almost wanted to melt into her body. "Xiao Jian, it's 6. The bus leaves at 6:30. Aren't you awake yet? You'll be late for school later." Qin Yuru's voice rang as she came up the stairs. The sudden voice made Yun Jian blush as she pushed Ce again. With this push, a certain part of her body that was only covered by a thin layer of clothing rubbed against him twice. It would have been fine if it was not rubbing, but once it did, Yun Jian could feel a certain part of Ce's body bulging. With that, Ce's breathing beside her quickened. "Let go." Yun Jian's expression could no longer be described as bashful. "Xiao Jian, why aren't you up yet? You weren't like this before. Get up now." Qin Yuru came up the stairs and was coming to the room. "Xiao Jian, move again and I'll take you," Ce suddenly whispered in Yun Jian's ear. Yun Jian's face flushed at once and she did not move anymore. Chapter 14:19. Just as Qin Yiru opened the door, she saw Yun Jian standing in front of her in a white miniskirt. Her daughter was looking at her with a blushing face. Xiao Jian, what's wrong? Qin Yiru was surprised. Did you bully Ae? What Qin Yiru said next, however, made Yun Jian wonder if she was Qin Yiru's biological daughter. Mom, I didn't. Yun Jian said as she walked around Qin Yiru and went downstairs, reaching for her bag as she walked. Breakfast is on the dining table. Remember to bring it to the car. Qin Yiru watched Yun Jian's back as she hurried down the stairs. She covered her mouth and chuckled before calling out to Yun Jian. Yun Jian hummed in response and went downstairs to pick up the breakfast that Qin Yiru had put in a white plastic bag from the dining table before heading out. She drove the car to Min City Military Academy. The 7-day holiday was over and today was the 10th of September. It was also the official start of Yun Jian's school at Min City Military Academy. Hence, Qin Yiru wanted her to change into a white miniskirt with a pink top. Yun Jian did not mind as she changed into it. She was also puzzled why Ce did not tell her to wear such a short skirt today. Shaking her head to stop thinking about it, Yun Jian picked up her breakfast and carried her bag before heading out. Inside the house, Ce smirked. He was still thinking about how alluring Yun Jian looked under her miniskirt. He would never tell anyone that he did not stop Yun Jian from wearing such a short skirt today because, cough. It was already 8:30 a.m. when she arrived at Min City Military Academy. 9 o'clock was the school arrival time. Considering that the students came from far away, the school purposely allowed them to arrive before 9 o'clock on the first day. The next day he would wake up at his normal time. Yun Jian attracted a lot of attention as soon as she arrived at school. She still had her hair tied up in a high ponytail, but she wore a white short skirt and a pink top. She had a beautiful face, and her perfect face attracted the attention of countless people around her. Even the girls couldn't help but take a few more glances. Yun Jian, I'm here. Come here quickly. Lin Wan was already waiting for Yun Jian at the school gate. When she saw Yun Jian, she rushed over and looked at Yun Jian from head to toe. Hey Yun Jian, this short skirt really matches you. It's so beautiful. As she spoke, Lin Wan looked around again. She didn't see Mu Ying. Why isn't Mu Ying here today? I remember that she was always the first one to arrive. Let's stand here and wait. Yun Jian pointed at the security post at the school gate and said. Okay. Lin Wan nodded. Then she stood with Yun Jian at the security post at the school gate and waited for Mu Ying. Just as Yun Jian and Lin Wan stood there, a female teacher on duty at the school gate who was less than 1.5 meters tall and wore a pair of stilettos saw Yun Jian. She was about 150 kilograms in weight but was less than 1.5 meters tall. She was dressed fashionably in a pair of stilettos. The female teacher on duty saw Yun Jian's beautiful figure. She was even wearing a white short skirt. Her perfect figure really made people jealous. So, the female teacher on duty came over and shouted at Yun Jian, "Which class are you from?" Yelling wasn't enough. The female teacher even handed her duty book to Yun Jian. Then she shouted at Yun Jian, "Write down your class name. Our school is a military school. Since you're here, don't you know the rules of the military school?" Chapter 14:20. The female teacher's voice trembled as she spoke. Her breasts were very big and they kept trembling as she spoke. The female teacher's breasts were very big, but the fat on her abdomen was even bigger. As her breasts trembled, the fat on her abdomen trembled even more fiercely than the fat on her breasts. When the female teacher said this, she did not give Yun Jian and Lin Wan a chance to speak. Instead, she spoke even more fiercely. Her words were like a machine gun, and she did not even give them a chance to take a breather. You girls only know how to dress up. How dare you come to school wearing such a short skirt? This is a military school, hey. Do you know what a military school is? Don't make yourself
For a
look
young
like
lady
a
to come
gorgeously
to a
dressed
military
chicken.
academy to study,
The boys in our
other than
military
wanting
school
to fish
will
for
fight
men,
for the country's
what else
career
could
in
she
the
do?
future.
If they were
They
asked
won't
to
waste
train,
themselves by
even the
dating little
simplest
girls
thing
like standing in a
you
military
girls, why
posture
don't
in
you
the
go to
morning
high
would
school
probably
and
make
come
them
to our
faint from
military
the sun.
school?
If
Don't
they
tell me
trained
you're
for a
here
long
to
time,
seduce our
they
boys
would
to
even
date you?
complain that they would
The
become
female
tan.
teacher on duty was
They would
getting
even
more
have
and
to
more
apply
ridiculous
sunscreen
with her
before
words.
training.
Yun
Wasn't
Jian
this
did not
talking
know
about
the
these
rules
girls
of the
who came
military
to the
school,
military
but
academy?
since she had broken the
Why did
rules
they
by
not
wearing
attend
a
a
short
normal
skirt
school
as
but
Qin
came to the
Yiru
military
said,
academy
Yun
to
Jian,
suffer? was not the kind of person who would ignore the school rules. The more the
Yun
female
Jian had
teacher
already
thought about
taken
it,
the duty
the
book
more
and
she
pen
felt
from
that
the
girls
female
like
teacher
Yun
on
Jian
duty.
and Lin Wan were
She
despicable.
planned to write her name
She
in
was
class
about
on
to
it.
use an even
Since
more
she had made a
exaggerated
mistake,
tone
she
to
was not
insult
the
Yun
kind of
Jian
person
and
who
Lin
would
Wan.
not admit it.
A male voice
However,
came from
this
the
female
side.
teacher acted
Yun
as if she
Jian,
had killed
why are
someone.
you standing here?
She had not stopped
The
talking
person
since
who
she
spoke
spoke.
was Gu Yunjian's
This made
comrade,
Yun
Yu
Jian, who was
Shaoluo.
about to write
Yu
her name in
Shaoluo was
class
also
on the
an
duty book.
instructor at
Stop.
Min City's military
Hurry up
academy.
and write. When the
Write
female
your name
teacher
in
saw Yu
class on it.
Shaoluo, she
You
was
broke the
stunned.
school rules,
She
so
was
you should
about
be
to
deducted
point out Yun
points.
Jian's
The
evilness to
female
Yu
teacher on
Shaoluo.
duty saw that
In the
Yun
end,
Jian
she
had
heard Yu
stopped writing,
Shaoluo pat
so
Yun
she
Jian's
frowned
shoulder
and
and praise
urged
her. Teacher,
Yun
this is
Jian,
our
you're
first
really
offense,
something.
and we are
You've
freshmen.
won first
We
place
have
in the
not learned the
wilderness
school
survival
rules.
event.
My friend will
Only
not
the
wear
three of you were
short
sent
skirts in the
straight to the
future.
elite class
Can you
among the
not deduct
freshmen.
this point?
Haha.
Lin Wan
Slashing
spoke
God
up
for
for
Team
Team
Monarch
lives up to
Usually,
her name
the first
indeed.
1 or 2 weeks
You're
of
amazing.
school was for the students to get used to the school rules and
Chapter
regulations.
14:21.
Even if the
The
students'
news of
names
Team
were
Monarch
recorded during
slashing
the
God
week of
entering
duty,
Min
the
City's
points would
military
not be
academy
deducted.
as a freshman had
This was
spread
because
like
the students would
wildfire in the
definitely
academy.
need to adapt to a
Even
new
if
school.
the female teacher
However,
did not
at
pay
this
attention
moment,
to the news,
Teacher Zhou
she
was
would have
planning
heard
to
about
directly
Team
deduct
Monarch's
Yun Jian's
God's
class's
impressive
score.
feats from others.
Therefore, Lin Wan
Not
was
to
not
mention that she
convinced.
was a snobbish teacher.
As a student, how
The
dare you
female
talk
teacher
back to your
liked to hang
teacher?
out with other
The
teachers
female
in school
teacher
and
raised her
gossip
voice
about
at
the
Lin
male
Wan when she
instructors
heard
and
that.
female teachers'
The
family
female
matters.
teacher had always thought
She would
that
also
the military
gossip about the
academy could only
talent
be
in
a
the
world
school
for
and
men.
whether the talent
Girls
had a
like
backer.
Yun Jian and
When
Lin
she saw
Wan,
Yun Jian
why
and
did they
Lin
come
Wan
to the
earlier,
military
the
academy
female
to
teacher
study?
instinctively assumed that Yun Jian and Lin Wan were the kind of girls who came to the military academy to seduce the boys. She assumed that they came to the military academy for that. The female teacher hated girls who had no power or influence, had a better figure than her, dressed up to the nines in the military academy, and swaggered around the boys like chicks. Moreover, the school's rules clearly stated that female students were not allowed to wear short skirts. Using that as an excuse, the female teacher caught Yun Jian and planned to give Yun Jian a good scolding. That was what the female teacher thought and did. She wanted to teach Lin Wan, who was beside Yun Jian, a lesson as well. However, she did not expect Yu Shaoluo Instructor Yu to appear here. Instructor Yu was widely recognized as a young and promising instructor in the school. He was young and a very capable instructor. The female teacher wanted to use that as an excuse to criticize Yun Jian in front of Instructor Yu so that he could help her teach Yun Jian a lesson. However, Yu Shaoluo walked up to Yun Jian and patted Yun Jian's shoulder, saying what he said earlier. Team Monarch slashing God. Before Team Monarch slashing God entered Min City's military academy, she had already caused a stir among all the instructors in the school. She had even caused the instructors to fight for her to join their team. A few days ago, she even won first place in the military training's outdoor survival event and was directly admitted to the elite class with 2 other girls. It was said that on the last day of the outdoor survival event, she represented Min City's military academy and destroyed the pride of Wulin Military Academy, which had always been at odds with Min City's military academy. Now, in Min City's military academy, slashing God was the symbol of a legend. Even the instructors and teachers in the school could not help but feel respect when they heard the word. What more a mere female teacher like her? The female teacher on duty's face dropped to the freezing point. Yu Shaoluo didn't know what the female teacher had just done. After hearing the female teacher's words, he laughed out loud and then responded to the female teacher. That's right, the killing god that everyone in our school is talking about is her. What do you think? Are you surprised? When I saw her this morning, I had the same reaction as you. I thought she was a weak little girl, but who would have thought? Ah. As soon as Yu Shaoluo finished, the female teacher's face turned as red as a chili pepper. Not only did she suspect Yun Jian, she even tried to make things difficult for Yun Jian. However, the female teacher was also a person who changed her face faster than flipping a book. When she heard that Yun Jian was slashing God, she immediately turned to look at Yun Jian and put on a smiling face that almost squeezed her wrinkles together. So this beautiful girl is slashing God. I really didn't expect that, ha. As she spoke, the teacher looked at her watch and told Yun Jian with a grin, "Students, go to class. 9 o'clock in the morning is considered as being late. Go now. It'll be bad if your homeroom teacher catches you being late." Chapter 1422. Just now the female teacher was clearly targeting her. Yunjian wasn't an idiot, so she naturally saw through it. Therefore Yunjian decided to beat her at her own game and directly retorted back. This time the female teacher was extremely embarrassed. The female teacher regretted that she wanted to deal with Yunjian. Especially now, in front of the most handsome, most outstanding and youngest instructor in the school, the female teacher was really a bit shy. After all, she was only 28 years old and was still unmarried. To put it bluntly, the female teacher wanted to leave a good impression in front of an outstanding man like Instructor Yu. But who would have thought that Yunjian wouldn't be like the previous students who obediently followed her words and walked through the school gate? Instead, she directly pointed out what she had just done in front of Instructor Yu. Wasn't this clearly making her lose face? Hey, instructor. The female teacher clenched her fist in her heart. A little unhappy when she saw Yunjian was a killing god away. She could only force a smile that was still trembling to face Instructor, my name is Zhang Ziao. How could that I'm the class teacher was just joking with you guys. The female teacher who called herself Zhang Ziao had always wanted to find a male instructor from the same school as her to be her boyfriend. Wait until you're familiar with the develop a husband and wife relationship. Then don't make such a low-level mistake again. Instructor Yu was handsome and was about the same age as her, so Zhang Ziao couldn't help but have thoughts about it. If you meet a kind teacher like me, then it's fine. When Yunjian, Lin Wan, and Muing went to report to the classroom, the female teacher didn't finish her words. The three of them walked into grade 1 was more or less incisive. Together at the last minute. Just hearing the sentence, the grade 1 class teacher like me started. Yunjian, because there were only 3 people in the elite class, it was naturally impossible to set up another class someone on the first day of school. In the following month, the school would select some good grade 1 students to enter the elite class together with embarrassing reality in front of the female teacher. In this month, Yunjian and the other two naturally went to the class that they were assigned to previously like other students. Felt a bit embarrassed. Because today was the first day of school, there were no classes for the whole day. The class teacher assigned each student to their dormitory. Aren't you guys going to be late at 9 o'clock? Although there weren't as many girls as boys in grade 1, stood up to ease the awkward atmosphere. The dormitory was waiting for people to a room. Yunjian said calmly. Yunjian was carrying her bag and heading to her own dormitory. Thank you for asking me to stay, but I'm very sorry that you didn't manage to deduct points from my class today. After that, Yunjian dragged Lin Wan to the other side to wait for Muing. Cough cough. I'll go take a look. Yu Xiaoluo didn't like talking to this female teacher who was almost 30 years old, wore a pair of high heels and was less than 1.55 meters tall, so he casually found an excuse. The female teacher's ugliness was only one of the reasons. What Yu Xiaoluo didn't like was the conduct of the female teacher. Chapter 1423. The dorms were assigned to all the girls in the first year of high school, regardless of class. 6 girls to 1 dorm. These dorms were assigned by the higher-ups of the school. The homeroom teacher, Teacher Chu, did not have the authority to do so. Due to the arrangement of the higher-ups, Yunjian, Muing and Lin Wan were all not in the same dorm. Seeing this result, Lin Wan could not help but complain loudly, we're not in the same dorm? I just went to Teacher Chu to change dorms. He said he did not have the authority to do so, Muing said. Yunjian narrowed her eyes. If it was a normal high school, the homeroom teacher would have the authority to change dorms. However, it was different in a military school. It was inevitable that there would be some discrepancies. Yunjian did not find it strange. At this time, on the way to the dorm building, Lin Wan leaned over to Yunjian and asked softly, "Oh right, Yunjian, which dorm are you in?" 602, Yunjian replied. Wow. I'm in 603. That's not a problem. We're close. Although we can't stay in the same dorm, it's good that we're not far away. Lin Wan said loudly. Oh right, Muing, what about you? Lin Wan turned her head and asked Muing. I'm in 603 like you, Muing said. There were actually only a few girls in the first year of high school. At most, they could form a class of 30 to 40 people. However, sometimes the probability was not high. When they were assigned dorms, they could not be in the same dorm.
Hey, how nice would it be if the three of us were in the same dorm? Lin Wan sighed again. It's okay. I can go over any time, Yun Jian said indifferently. Hey Yun Jian, didn't the teacher say that our school rules state that students cannot casually sleep in the same dorm? You can't go to other people's dorms? Lin Wan pouted. Then I'll sneak over. Yun Jian's lips curled into a smile. Then she walked towards the dormitory building ahead of Lin Wan and Mu Ying. Mu Ying and Lin Wan both smiled. Both of them had never seen Yun Jian joke before. Now that they saw Yun Jian grinning, they were both stunned. But soon Mu Ying and Lin Wan followed. The sixth floor of the female dormitory building. Room 602. Lin Wan stood in dorm 603 and looked at Yun Jian reluctantly. In the end she was pulled into her room by Mu Ying. Yun Jian tilted her head and smiled faintly. Then she carried her bag and walked into room 602. As soon as she entered the room, Yun Jian's roommates who had arrived at school were all in place. They were all sitting on their beds and tidying up their beds. When they saw Yun Jian walk in, one of the girls standing at the door grinned at her but didn't say anything. Yun Jian walked in with her bag on one shoulder. She had just walked into the room when suddenly, something fell from one of the beds. So annoying. I already said that I don't want to go to school in this damn place. Great, I didn't even bring my teddy bear. Without it I can't sleep. It was a girl wearing a princess dress and dressed like a doll. She was sitting on the upper bunk bed. She was rummaging through her bag. Seeing that there was nothing in her bag that she wanted, she became impatient and threw a teacup from her bag onto the bed. Yun Jian had just entered her dorm when she was hit. Someone came in. One of the girls couldn't help but exclaim when she saw Yun Jian walk in and the teacup just happened to be thrown at Yun Jian. The other girls were slightly frightened. However, they saw that after Yun Jian sensed the danger, she reached out and caught the teacup that the girl in the princess dress had thrown from the upper bunk. Yun Jian didn't even look up and caught it. Chapter 1424. Several girls in the same dormitory thought that Yun Jian would suffer. After all, the girl in the princess dress just now smashed the teacup off the bed in anger, so one could imagine how fierce that force was. Yun Jian, on the other hand, had walked into the dorm without warning. That teacup was smashed so fiercely, it would be strange if this new student didn't suffer. But what the girls saw was that Yun Jian stretched out her hand and caught the teacup. After reacting, the girls in the same dormitory were all surprised. One of the girls couldn't help but clap and then gave Yun Jian a thumbs up. God! Classmate, what's your name? You're so amazing. This girl's praise didn't make Yun Jian complacent.
On the contrary, she didn't even show the slightest bit of a proud expression. Casually throwing the teacup on the upper bunk bed of the girl in the princess dress, Yunjian turned her head and glanced at the girl who gave her a thumbs up just now and asked, "Are there any more beds?" The beds here weren't fixed. Generally the beds were first come, first served. Whoever grabbed the lower bunk bed would get the good spot. There's still a bed in the corner, it's the upper bunk. The girl who gave Yunjian a thumbs up said, and then she continued, "Classmate, you were so amazing just now. Is it convenient for you to tell us your name?" "Oh right, before asking for other people's names, you have to introduce yourself first." "Hehe, my name is Ning Kaidai, I'm a student of grade 111, from Xia City, 16 years old this year. We have already introduced ourselves just now. Now our dormitory has 5 roommates including you, so you can introduce yourself again." A girl standing next to Ning Kaidai put her arm around Ning Kaidi's shoulder and said to Yunjian. After saying that, the girl stuck her tongue out at Yunjian, and then lively introduced herself to Yunjian. "My name is Meng Xiaolian, I'm from Min City, 17 years old this year. Kaidai and I are classmates in the same class." As she spoke, Meng Xiaolian tightened her arms around Ning Kaidi's shoulders. "My name is Han Nina. I'm 16 years old this year. My nationality is Y country. My mother is Z country. Also, my Chinese isn't very accurate. Please take care of me." A girl who had been sitting in the corner stuck her head out and greeted Yunjian shyly. This girl had a head of naturally golden wavy hair. Her skin was fair, and her facial features were very delicate. She looked as delicate as a doll. The most eye-catching thing was that the girl who called herself Han Nina had blue eyes. Unlike modern girls who wore cosmetic contact lenses, Han Nina's eyes were sky blue. They looked very natural and beautiful. After Han Nina greeted them, Yunjian also felt the friendliness of her new roommate. She adjusted her backpack and grinned, revealing a row of neat front teeth. She smiled at the 3 girls in front of her. "My name is Yunjian." Obviously, the girls in front of her didn't know about Yunjian's achievements during the military training. Yunjian also didn't see these girls during the military training. They probably didn't participate in the military training. After all, not all students who came to the military school to become special forces or soldiers. The military school also had a major for training military doctors. Many female students still came to the military school to apply for the military doctor's position. Therefore, it wasn't strange that these female students didn't participate in the military training last time. "Yunjian, your name is really nice, haha." Ning Kaidai smiled at Yunjian. "You guys are so annoying. Keep talking. Can't you see that I'm so annoying? Could you please shut your mouths? I'm going to make a call." Chapter 1425. Seeing that the person sitting on the upper bunk had flipped out again, Ning Kai-dai pursed her lips and hurriedly pulled Yunjian to the toilet. Then she leaned over to Yunjian's ear and whispered, "She's called Qing Jiaojia. I don't know which class she's from. Anyway, she got angry the moment she entered the dormitory. After greeting us, she sat on the bed and threw a tantrum. I don't know who provoked her, but I think she's quite difficult to get along with. Alright, there's another roommate in our dormitory. I heard that something happened at home, so she'll come back a few days later. Also, don't take the initiative to talk to Qing Jiaojia." Ning Kai-dai didn't say anything after that. After Yunjian walked out of the toilet, she saw Qing Jiaojia standing on the upper bunk bed with her hands on her hips. She was holding a cell phone in her hand and shouting at it. Yunjian didn't know who she was dialing. "I don't want to be here. I don't want to be a military doctor. I want to go home. Get the butler to drive me home." "What? Mom won't let me? I don't want to. I'm studying in this lousy school and I'm not allowed to go home. I can't even hug my teddy bear to sleep. I want to go home. I want you to get the butler to drive me home immediately. Otherwise, I'll complain to Grandma and get her to fire you." Regardless of Qing Jiaojia's identity, one could tell from her clothes and the way she was shouting at the person on the other end of the phone. Qing Jiaojia was most likely a rich young lady. She definitely had some status. Yunjian carried her school bag and went straight to the top bunk bed in the corner. She threw her school bag on the bed, then grabbed the handrail of the top bunk bed. She didn't even put her leg on the steps of the top bunk bed. With a flip of one foot, she jumped from the ground to the top bunk bed that was about 1.45 meters high. Then she began to tidy up her things. None of the girls in dormitory 602 came to the military school to learn martial arts, except for Yunjian. Every girl here was here because they wanted to study military medicine. This meant that every girl here was no different from an ordinary girl. Therefore, when they saw Yunjian jump onto the bed, every girl present opened their mouths wide in shock. Even Qing Jiaojia, who was still throwing a tantrum, opened her mouth and didn't react for a long time. "Wow, my God. Yunjian, why are you so powerful? Aren't you a medical student?" When Ning Kai-dai saw Yunjian's move, she and Ming Xiaolian walked over in surprise. The two of them looked at Yunjian in shock. "Study medicine?" Yunjian's eyebrows twitched slightly, then she shook her head gently. "Oh, wow. Are you planning to become a soldier in the future?" Ning Kai-dai continued to ask in shock. "Special Forces," Yunjian answered with 3 words. "That's so cool." Ning Kai-dai shouted again. "Shut up. All of you shut up. Do you still want me to talk on the phone or not?" Qing Jiaojia roared again. This time, the atmosphere was completely stifled and no one spoke. After tidying up their blankets and things in the dormitory, they returned to their respective classrooms. September 10th was the first day of school, and the students didn't attend classes on the first day. As soon as they arrived at the classroom, the homeroom teacher, Teacher Chu, announced a particularly delightful news. "Students, the day after tomorrow, which is September 12th, is our school's 50th anniversary. In order to celebrate, the school is preparing to hold a food festival for the whole day. Because the announcement was rather sudden, the sophomores and juniors already knew about it. So tomorrow, the freshmen can go out to buy food and prepare for the food festival." Chapter 1426. The class was overjoyed to have such an event right after school started. All of them shrieked when they heard Mr. Chu's words. When the students from the neighboring classes heard Yunjian and her classmates shrieking, they thought that something terrible had happened. All right. Don't get too excited, everyone. I'm even more excited than all of you." As a male teacher, Mr. Chu liked to joke around. Hearing Teacher Chu's words, all the students in the class laughed. "Right, on the day of the food festival, other than selling your own food, you can also go to the stalls of other classes to buy food made by other classes. But remember, be careful." Mr. Chu reminded them again before he returned to his office. The food festival was on the 12th of September, while the 13th of September was Qin Yiru's birthday. At the same time, the 13th of September last year was the day Yunjian was reborn. Counting the time, it had been almost a year since she was reborn into this body. Yunjian felt a little emotional. This year was the most relaxing one in her career as an agent. Yunjian's long lashes fluttered. On the 13th of September, the second day of the food festival, she planned to return to Longmen City to celebrate Qin Yiru's birthday. Yunjian even invited Gu Junjian. Qin Yiru had no idea about it, of course. Yunjian planned to give Qin Yiru a surprise. Yunjian could skip her own birthday, but she felt that she had to celebrate Qin Yiru's birthday every year. The 12th of September came in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, all the students in Min City's military academy did not have to go to class. They spent the morning preparing the food for the food festival. The students were nimble with their hands, each of them creating exquisite and delicious food. Some of the delicacies made one salivate just by looking at them. The food festival officially began in the morning. The start of the food festival meant that the students could sell their own food. There were all kinds of exquisite cakes, spicy soup, sushi, drinks. Even Yunjian was dragged by Lin Wan and Muing to buy a lot of food. At this moment, Yunjian was holding a big hamburger in her hand. As she ate, she asked Muing, "Is Mad Dragon still in Min City?" This question made Muing, who was drinking her drink, choke. Her cheeks were instantly covered by a bright red glow. "He's still here." "Yes." Yunjian nodded gently. Hey, Yunjian." At this moment, Yunjian saw her new roommates Ning Kaidai, Meng Xiaolian and Han Nina, who were selling cakes, waving at her. Other than herself, Yunjian knew that Ning Kaidai, Meng Xiaolian, Han Nina, and Cheng Jiaojia were all in the same class. However, Ning Kaidai and the other two didn't want to play with Cheng Jiaojia. Cheng Jiaojia was sitting not far away. She was snorting coldly as she squatted there and played with her phone. Seeing Yunjian come over, Ning Kaidai stuffed a cake into Yunjian's hands. Hey, Xiaolian and I made this together. It's free of charge. It's delicious, hee. Yunjian accepted it without hesitation. Just as she took the cake, she suddenly saw a military helicopter anxiously landing on the sports field not far away from the food festival. The food festival's stall was not far from the sports field. When she saw the military helicopter, Yunjian's eyelids twitched slightly. At this moment she saw Yu Xiaoluo running over. When he saw Yunjian, Yu Xiaoluo's expression was very ugly. Yunjian. When Yu Xiaoluo ran over, his face was terrifyingly dark. It was an ugly and uneasy feeling that he had never felt before. Yunjian, listen to me. Don't get agitated. Your dad? He represented Z country and a group of Interpol yesterday to arrest the boss of the European and American underground black market. In the end, he didn't come back. According to the people who escaped, he was caught. It's very likely that he's already... Yunjian's dad was naturally referring to Gu Junjian. At this point, Yu Xiaoluo's voice was a little choked up. Hearing this, the surrounding students were stunned. All the students in the military academy had just come into contact with these things. They all thought that these things that Yu Xiaoluo was talking about were very distant and glorious. But when they found out that Yunjian's dad was very likely sacrificed because of this, all the students standing around couldn't help but look at Yunjian sympathetically. They thought that Yunjian would start howling like a normal girl after hearing about this. No. My dad will be fine. But after hearing this, Yunjian was very calm. She looked at Yu Xiaoluo and said calmly, "The boss of the European and American underground black market, right? Bring me there immediately." When Yu Xiaoluo heard Yunjian's words, he thought that she was crazy. Yunjian was powerful, the killing god of Team Monarch. But she was just a child. No matter how powerful she was, how could she fight against the European and American underground forces alone? Yunjian, don't get agitated. Listen to me. We'll do our best to save your dad. Before Yu Xiaoluo could finish, Yunjian said to Yu Xiaoluo in front of all the students. Chapter 1427. Once Yunjian said that, everyone was stunned. Whether it was the instructors who chased after Yu Xiaoluo, Lin Wan, Yunjian's new roommates, Ning Kaidai and the rest, as well as the students who were participating in the food festival, they were all stunned by Yunjian's arrogant words. No matter how shocked or frightened the people around them were, they were nowhere near as shocked as Yu Xiaoluo and the instructors. The boss of the Western underground black market was indeed a man named Glenn. Moreover, Yu Xiaoluo had only told Yunjian that her father and a group of Interpol had tried to capture the boss of the Western underground black market but were caught instead. Yunjian had said the boss's name accurately. Even the male students who were studying in the military school and paid more attention to international affairs would not know the name of the boss of the Western underground black market, right? Although Yunjian was the slashing god of Team Monarch, she was only a 15-year-old girl at the end of the day. No matter how powerful Yunjian was, how did she know? While the people around them were stunned, Yunjian was already making her way to where the military helicopter was parked. Seeing Yunjian walking toward the military helicopter, Yu Xiaoluo reacted quickly and walked over to stop Yunjian. Yunjian, calm down. I know you're capable, but Glenn's identity is not ordinary. Interpol had sent many internationally renowned agents to infiltrate the Western underground black market's territory and sacrificed many people, but they could not arrest him. If you act so rashly, not only will you not save old Gu, you'll even lose your life. Yu Xiaoluo spat out those words with red eyes and trembling. As a special forces soldier who protected the country, they faced danger at all times. Yu Xiaoluo and Gu Junjian had known each other for a long time. He hoped more than anyone that Gu Junjian could come back alive. However, Yu Xiaoluo knew that Yun Jian was Gu Yunjian's current daughter. Gu Junjian doted on this daughter more than his own son. Yu Xiaoluo wanted to save Gu Junjian more than anyone else. But he couldn't risk Yun Jian's life. The atmosphere of the food festival immediately dropped. Yun Jian knew that Yu Xiaoluo said this for her own good. After all, if she was really just an ordinary girl, it would be very dangerous to rush to the rescue. That was true. However, she was no ordinary girl, nor was she Team Monarch slashing God. Tomorrow was Qin Yiru's birthday, but something happened to Gu Junjian. How was she going to explain this to Qin Yiru? Was she supposed to watch Gu Junjian get into trouble? She clearly had the ability to save Gu Junjian, so why didn't she do anything? She couldn't do that. For the sake of Qin Yiru, Yun Jian had to do something. If I don't do anything, which one of you can save my father? So get out of my way. Yun Jian didn't explain much. She pushed Yu Xiaoluo away and ran towards the military helicopter. Hey, Yun Jian. Seeing this, Yu Xiaoluo and the other instructors chased after her. What's going on? Ning Kaidai asked in a daze. Why is she joining in the fun? Does she really think she's Superman? Cheng Jiaojia, who was sitting on the bench, played with her phone and said coldly. Cheng Jiaojia didn't like being in Min City's military academy, and she hated everyone in Min City's military academy. She's not Superman, she's a god. An existence that no one can surpass. Mu Ying turned her head and glared at Cheng Jiaojia. She said calmly and followed Yun Jian. They'll be fine, right? Although Lin Wan was scared, she still wanted to follow. A slender hand grabbed the corner of Lin Wan's shirt. Lung Hanja walked over and grabbed the corner of Lin Wan's shirt. He said to everyone, Yun Jian will be fine. She can fly a helicopter and go in and out of the Amazon forest freely. It's not an exaggeration to say that she's a god. Lung Hanja, who suddenly appeared and said these words, made Lin Wan, Ning Kaidai, Meng Xiaoyan, and all the other students who were standing around them open their mouths in shock. Yun Jian could fly a helicopter? And in a terrifying place like the Amazon forest, freely. Chapter 1428. Lung Hanja's mouth twitched when he saw everyone's shocked expression. He didn't say anything else. Yes, Yun Jian was a god. She wasn't just the legend of Min City Military Academy. She was also a world-class legend. Such a terrifying person. Such a frightening existence. Lung Hanja pursed his lips and didn't say anything in the end. However, the fear he had for Yun Jian, or rather, the thoughts in his heart, was something that no one present could imagine. Yun Jian, she wasn't an ordinary student of Min City Military Academy. She was... Yes, Lung Hanja didn't forget what happened in the Amazon forest. He was the only one who didn't forget what happened that day. He even knew Yun Jian's identity and Ying Ying's identity. After knowing Mu Ying's identity, Lung Hanja suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. He was afraid that Ying Ying didn't like him anymore. However, when he found out that the Mu Ying he liked when he was young was actually a different person from the Mu Ying he knew now, Lung Hanja didn't feel like he couldn't handle it. Instead, he heaved a huge sigh of relief. So, his Ying Ying never hated him. she was just a different person. And his Ying might not even be alive anymore. Senior, why are you crying? Lin Wan's clothes were grabbed by Lung Hanja. Just as she was about to ask Lung Hanja to let go of her clothes, when Yu Xiaoluo and the others saw the pilot raise the helicopter, they thought that Yun Jian couldn't go up. The wind is too strong. What happened next stunned the entire audience. Yun Jian's body tilted forward. You guys don't have to worry about it. She ran 5 meters at the speed of light. Go do whatever you need to do. But when she was 5 meters away from the helicopter, she stomped on the ground and leaped forward. Lung Hanja let go of Lin Wan's clothes. At this time, the helicopter had already flown about 2 meters in the air. Yun Jian ran towards the military helicopter and actually grabbed the bottom handle of the helicopter and the other instructors chased after her with all their might. With a light swing, however, they realized that Yun Jian and nimbly flipped her body to the side of the helicopter. Faster than all of them. The pilot did not close the door and easily boarded the helicopter. He was indeed helicopter took off, but he couldn't just watch as Yun Jian ran towards the military helicopter. The force of the wind was very helicopter was indeed not carrying another factor to rescue Yun Jian's move was very dangerous. However, if Yun Jian went with him, the difficulty level was also abnormally high. Let Gu Junjian down. Because if Yun Jian went with him, it would be extremely dangerous. Even though the instructors were stunned, before Yun Jian did not forget to continue running in that direction. He had told Yu Xiaoluo the astonishment on their faces could not be erased. If something really happened to Yun Jian, then Yu Xiaoluo instructors shouted in shock as he ran. At the same time, when he had a stunned expression on his face. One had to know that the instructors present were all very powerful. But none of them could do that. Yun Jian up the helicopter when it was taking off. However, the pilot's reaction was also quite fast. Usually, when a helicopter was flying high in the sky, that was parked on ropes would be thrown down for people to grab onto. Yun Jian was only about 10 meters away from the helicopter. Although it was not easy, any Special Forces soldier with a strong enough physique could do it. However, when the helicopter took off, the force from below would cause a strong gust of wind on the ground. At this time, there was no one who could get on the helicopter without using any ropes. At least, the instructors in front of them could not do it. Damn, she's too powerful. Is she really just a student from Min City's military academy? One of the instructors directly complained. Just as he complained, Yun Jian had already knocked out the pilot on the helicopter. Then, she steered the helicopter back and lowered the rope from the helicopter. Muing, get up. After she lowered the rope, she returned to the pilot's seat and accurately steered the helicopter to Mu Ying's side. Muing ran forward 2 steps and then jumped violently. Yu Xiaoluo and the other instructors also saw the rope that was lowered. They wanted to rush up and grab the rope, but they did not expect that when Yun Jian lowered the rope, it was right in front of Muing. Muing reached out and grabbed the rope. Then she climbed the rope and got on the helicopter in a few breaths. Then she put the rope away. Instructor Yu, I'm sorry, but he's my father. It's my mother's birthday tomorrow. Before tomorrow, I'll definitely bring my father back. With that, Yun Jian piloted the helicopter and left the place skillfully. Damn. Who can tell me why this girl knows how to fly a helicopter? A plump instructor put his hands on his waist and gasped in surprise as he wailed. Just now they had used all their strength and still couldn't catch up with Yun Jian. This made him feel incredulous. Yun Jian was just a little girl who had just entered the school. Going further, she was Team Monarch/God, yet she possessed such astounding strength. Now King know why you guys snatched her into your team before she even entered the school. How is this girl a good seedling? She was simply a genius. We might not even meet one in a few hundred years. One of the instructors slapped his knee in an exaggerated manner as he yelled loudly. Yu Xiaoluo scratched his head. He took out his phone and called his superior to request for another helicopter to catch up with Yun Jian. Since Yun Jian had already gone this far, he really couldn't stop her. Moreover, with Yun Jian's skills, he might as well go all out. Country X. There were more than 10 countries in Europe and America, and Country X was one of them. The boss of Europe and America's underground black market, Glenn, liked to stay in Country X the most, so Yun Jian directly flew the helicopter to Country X. At this time, the helicopter's fuel was almost used up. Yu Xiaoluo, 2 other Special Forces soldiers, and a pilot's helicopter followed Yun Jian's helicopter closely. The more they flew, the more the pilot exclaimed, "Damn, who is this little girl? This helicopter is so stable. She avoided the airflow all the way here. There's no turbulence at all." She flew the helicopter directly to Country X? Did she know that the boss of Europe and America's underground black market, Glenn, is in Country X? *CK, this girl is too fierce. Chapter 1430. On the other side, Yun Jian was sitting in the pilot's seat. The man who was supposed to be the pilot of the plane was tied up. Yun Jian didn't do anything to him. She just wanted him to behave a little. Damn little girl, you're so powerful. When you come back you must teach me how to avoid the airflow. I've been flying a helicopter for 3 years, and this helicopter can't avoid the airflow in my hands. It's bumping and bumping. The pilot didn't realize that he was tied up by Yun Jian. Instead he was eager to learn and asked Yun Jian to teach him the technology. Yun Jian curled her lips, thinking that this pilot was quite interesting. Yun Jian landed the helicopter in a deserted place, and then let Mu Ying untie the rope that tied the pilot. The helicopter is out of fuel. You can contact someone to take you back. Yun Jian glanced at the pilot, then gathered the things on her body and walked to a quiet place. She had all kinds of knives on her, although she didn't have guns. But guns she could snatch them herself, and then led Yun Jian and the others into the house. Yun Jian's footsteps as soon as they walked into the house, just as the two of them walked over there, they were stopped by Yu Xiaoluo, who rushed introduce you. These are all members of the Interpol brigade from all over the country. Yu Xiaoluo introduced the group of people dressed as locals to Yun Jian. We and the Interpol have sent dozens of agents or special forces to his lair. But the result was no Xiaoluo's words, and immediately in the end there was no dissatisfaction. You still can't contact them. But just as this person opened his mouth, he was stopped by Yu Xiaoluo. But it's useless to be anxious. How about this? I agree to let you stay, but we have to think about it in the long run. You actually brought students from Min City's military academy here. Are you crazy? Just as Yu Xiaoluo said this, he was interrupted by Yun Jian. How many people do you have? Heard Yu Xiaoluo's words and immediately shouted. This foreign woman was also from the Interpol brigade and could speak Chinese. The boss of the underground black market in Europe were no different from the women of Country X. Only it was obvious that she was disguised as someone from Country X. Therefore, the Interpol had always sent people to lurk in Country X. You were in order to arrest the bad guys one day. After the foreign woman never told Yun Jian that Country X also had people stationed there for a long time. I didn't bring them here. How did Yun Jian stole our helicopter and drove it here? Yun Jian said again. Yu Xiaoluo's next sentence made this group of people who accused him of wrongdoing together with two special forces soldiers. They drove a helicopter here to a bustling street in Country X. The architecture of Country X was completely different from that of Country Z. Whether it was in terms of customs or style of dress, it was completely different from Country Z. They flew a helicopter here. Yu Xiaoluo took Yun Jian, Mu Ying, and two other special forces soldiers to a deep helicopter. They then went around many streets and came to a house. And the others into the house. Standing outside the house was a man wearing very ordinary Country X clothes. Mu Ying and circled around them a few times, the man let out a cry of surprise. Old you, I don't know how to fly a helicopter. The one who knows how to fly a helicopter is Yun Jian. Mu Ying opened her mouth and said. Mu Ying didn't know how to fly a helicopter. In her previous life she was only 9 years old when she died, so she had never touched a helicopter at all. After Mu Ying's death, 70% of Yun Jian's batch of children were eliminated, and the remaining children began to learn all kinds of heavy weapons, including helicopters, fighter jets, and so on. In the organization, not all children were allowed to learn powerful weapons from the beginning. Only after eliminating most of the weak, would the strong be selected from a small group of strong people. This small group of strong people was the focus of the organization's training. They had to learn all kinds of weapons from aircraft, tanks and cannons to knives, guns and flying arrows. As an agent, no matter where they were, they had to immediately integrate into the environment. This was something that had to be done, regardless of whether it was an agent of an underground organization or an agent of a loyal country. And in the organization, there was a written rule that those who couldn't finish learning all the heavy weapons arranged by the organization within the specified time would die. So in the end, out of the hundreds of children, only 3 survived. Speaking of which, back to reality. Mu Ying's words just now successfully turned everyone's eyes to Yun Jian. Just now, when he led Yun Jian and the others into the house, the man couldn't help but swallow a breath. He saw Yun Jian standing there with one hand in her trouser pocket, standing very lazily, as if the person that everyone was talking about just now wasn't her. Cough cough. Let's not dwell on this question first. Yu Xiaoluo immediately eased the atmosphere, then he quickly said, what we need to discuss now is how to sneak into Glen's territory and rescue old Go. We've sent so many agents to infiltrate Glen's territory, but what did they send back? No one could escape from Glen's territory. Without exception they were all discovered and killed. We haven't even been able to contact them yet. Old you should know the dangers of that place better than any of us. The one who spoke was the man who had just led Yun Jian and the others in. This man was a member of the Interpol. His name was Zhengliang. He was quite righteous and good at collecting information. When Zhengliang said this, there was a trace of despair in his voice. Obviously he wanted to save Gu Junjian very much. However, based on the current situation, saving him was harder than ascending to the heavens. When Zhengliang said this, Yu Xiaoluo fell silent. Yu Xiaoluo naturally understood what Zhengliang meant. Based on the current situation, there was basically no hope of rescuing Gu Junjian. When Yunjian heard this, she frowned slightly and turned to walk towards the door. Hey Yunjian, where are you going? Seeing that Yunjian was about to leave, Yu Xiaoluo hurriedly ran over to stop her and asked. If you're not going, I'll go. Yunjian said indifferently. Your sister, are you crazy? That's an underground organization. A black market. Do you think you have 3 heads and 6 arms? Do you have the ability to go in? We're already in a mess, don't add to it. The woman who spoke was the one who was standing in the corner just now. However, just as the woman finished speaking, Yunjian suddenly swung her hand and 5 blades flew neatly from Yunjian's side to the woman's side. At the same time, Yunjian was so fast that Yu Xiaoluo couldn't react at all. She dashed from the door to the woman standing in the corner. 5 blades flew past the woman's head, left shoulder, left waist, right shoulder, and right waist at the same time without hurting her at all. The woman was so frightened by the sudden blades that her face instantly turned pale. However, before she could come back to her senses, she saw a shiny butterfly knife on her neck. The fragrance of a young girl wafted over. The first thing she saw was Yunjian standing at the door far away from her. She arrived in front of her in a short 3 seconds. Chapter 1432. You don't have the right. These 4 words were like an invisible slap that almost made the woman vomit blood. However, the woman had to admit that she did not react to Yunjian's attack at all. This also meant that the student from Min City's military academy in front of her was more powerful than her. She did not even have the chance to react when she attacked. Blackie, don't underestimate her. You don't know, at that time, in order to stop her from getting on the helicopter, I let the helicopter pilot fly the helicopter into the sky first. In the end, she rushed over and snatched the helicopter when it was already in the air. She was able to accomplish such a dangerous task so easily. I think we can give it a try with her around to save old Gu today. Anyway, I'm going all out. At most, I'll lose my life. I can't interfere with whether you guys are willing to come together or not. After all, your lives are your own. But as brothers, as my brothers and comrades, don't stop us today. I want to go with them. Yu Xiaoluo had been frowning and thinking about this matter just now. In the end, he did not care anymore. He decided to go all out. Gu Junjian was like his elder brother. He had helped him a lot. Later they became comrades and were very close. Now Gu Junjian was in trouble. His elder brother was in trouble. How could he sit still and wait for death? Yunjian, the 3 of us go. He was willing to believe in Yunjian for once. Yu Xiaoluo clenched his fists. He shouted at Yunjian and walked out. The woman called Blackie by Yu Xiaoluo was codenamed Blackie. However, since these people were not willing to help her, she had to save Gu Junjian by herself. She looked no different from matter how powerful Glenn was. Blackie was just by Yu Xiaoluo's story about Yunjian. Yunjian, now that she saw Yu Xiaoluo bringing Yunjian and Mu Ying to Glenn's headquarters alone, she wanted to say, "Follow me and listen to my instructions." Blackie stopped talking and could not say a short answer. Let them go. Then she took Yu Xiaoluo and Mu Ying to Glenn's. They know that it's a big fire pit, but they still want to jump there. I told him that we can't move now. When did Yu Xiaoluo become so unwise? Seeing that Yu Xiaoluo could not be pulled back, he followed Yunjian and the other 2 out of the house. And Zheng Liang suddenly slammed the table and roared. And Zheng Liang was the captain of all the Interpol members present. Yu Xiaoluo's identity was an instructor at Min City's military academy. He also had another identity. He was a member of Interpol and in Zheng Liang's team. Captain this. Blackie looked at Zheng Liang's eyes. Finally, Zheng Liang slammed the table. Here Yunjian's use SS2's Huatit, TTSS/STSS rights. STTs you people's teat heat he some people would be so scared that they would piss their pants before the war started when they heard her identity, but an old fellow like Glenn wouldn't fall for this. Chapter 1433. The front desk of Glenn's headquarters was the biggest casino in Country X, the Gleaner Casino. Glenn's headquarters was right behind the Gleaner Casino. To enter Glenn's headquarters, one would have to pass through the Gleaner Casino. The entrance of the Gleaner Casino was heavily guarded. Any rustling of leaves in the wind would alert the guards. To enter, one would have to pass through the security check at the entrance. Yun Jian was familiar with the place as she had been here more than once. Of course, she had been here as Slaying God back then, but she had disguised herself with another face. Slaying God's real face had not been seen by many in the underworld or even in the assassin and secret agent circle. Perhaps Slaying God would often appear in public, but every time she appeared, she would change her face. The shape of her face was different every time, and even her height and weight were sometimes ambiguous. Therefore, outsiders had no idea what Slaying God looked like. Although Glenn was a despicable man in Yun Jian's world, he was a big shot with an extraordinary international status. Even Yun Jian had to put in some effort to deal with Glenn. At that moment, Yun Jian was standing not far away from the Gleaner Casino with Yu Xiaoluo and Mu Ying. The house next to them could cover Yun Jian, Yu Xiaoluo and Mu Ying. Follow my instructions from now on, Yun Jian said with narrowed eyes. Mu Ying and Yu Xiaoluo nodded. Then Yun Jian waved, planning to lead Mu Ying and Yu Xiaoluo over there. Just as Yu Xiaoluo was about to walk over, Yun Jian noticed a few people popping out from the side. They grabbed Yu Xiaoluo and stopped Yun Jian and Mu Ying from moving forward. Looking closely, they were none other than Zhengliang, Blackie and the rest. You guys. When Yu Xiaoluo saw Zhengliang and the others, he was so shocked that he almost shouted out loud. However, Zhengliang and the others covered his mouth. Little brat, keep your voice down. Just now, you ran out after saying those words in high spirits. As the captain, I can't just sit around and wait for my death. Listen to my orders later. The rest of you follow me and sneak in. And Zhengliang gently slapped Yu Xiaoluo's head and said sternly, Captain Yu. Yu Xiaoluo knew that he had been too impulsive today. Who wouldn't be anxious in the current situation? When Gu Junjian was in trouble, who wouldn't be anxious to save him? However, if he acted rashly, not only would he not be able to save them, he might even lose his life. And Zhengliang was considering the big picture. In comparison, Yu Xiaoluo was childish. However, Yu Xiaoluo had never expected that his team members would still follow him even though they knew that he was taking a risk. Therefore, Yu Xiaoluo was so touched that he couldn't speak. Alright, don't say anything. Listen to my orders. Let's go. And Zhengliang waved his hand and said. Yun Jian, who was standing at the side, blinked her eyes. I'll bring you in through the back door. In the next moment, Yun Jian's words were heard. What? Back door? And Zhengliang suddenly heard Yun Jian's words. He immediately turned his head and looked at Yun Jian in surprise. What back door is there? In order to ensure his own safety, Glenn wanted to enter his base camp. Everyone knew that there was only one way to go, and that was to enter through the main entrance of the Gleaner Casino. How could there be other back doors? Black Sister was stunned for a moment before asking in return. Just follow me. Yun Jian said with a red arc. 10 minutes later, the few of them easily arrived at the backyard of Glen Casino, which was also Glen's base camp. Hiding in the corner, and Jing Liang and the others looked at Yun Jian in surprise. Chapter 1434. Don't look at me like that, I know a lot of things. Yun Jian turned the butterfly knife in her hand. She didn't lose her smile and said softly. Everyone's curiosity was piqued when they heard this. But at this moment no one dared to make a sound. Yun Jian spoke all the way, but she was able to successfully avoid the enemy's attention without being discovered. The few people present were slightly impressed by Yun Jian. They couldn't help but sigh from the bottom of their hearts. This little girl was really too powerful. Just like what Yu Xiaoluo said. No. It was even more powerful than what Yu Xiaoluo had described. At least at this moment, they had already entered Glen's base camp. They had sneaked into Glen's base camp in 10 minutes. What an inconceivable thing. One had to know that some of the agents sent into Glen's base camp in the past were even caught as soon as they entered the gate. It took them a few days to barely sneak into Glen's base camp. This was already something that only very powerful agents could do. One had to know how strict the security of Glen's base camp was. It was like a fly flying in from the door. It would be discovered, because this place was full of cameras. And Yun Jian? She led everyone to avoid one camera after another. She swaggered in as if she was in her own home. That's right, Yun Jian had swaggered in from the back door with everyone just now. She didn't look like she was hiding at all. If they were hiding, it was only now that everyone stopped and hid in the corner under the stairs to discuss countermeasures. Seeing that the few people in front of her still didn't dare to speak, as if they were afraid of being discovered, Yun Jian curled her lips slightly and said, "In the next 10 minutes no one will pass by this staircase so you can speak boldly." Based on the fact that Yun Jian had brought them into Glen's base in just 10 minutes, everyone had gone from being skeptical and doubtful in the beginning to believing whatever Yun Jian said now. They believed her without a doubt. What should we do next? Yu Xiaoluo asked. We have to find the dungeon of Glen's base camp first. And Jing Liang said. And Jing Liang said as he frowned. Base camp's dungeon? Blackie asked doubtfully. The dungeon of Glen's base camp should be in the basement. It's the cell that Glen used to imprison the agents who came to assassinate him. Should be near here. At this point, and Jing Liang frowned, and then his face couldn't help but darken. Captain, what's wrong? Blackie felt in Jing Liang's frown and couldn't help but ask. Intuition told Black Sister that the dungeon was not simple. Sure enough, and Jing Liang's next words made the hearts of everyone present tense. The dungeon of Glen's base camp was once known as the strongest cell in Europe and America. Not only were there agents who came to assassinate Glen, but there were also assassins and agents who were subdued by Glen. Even some international people who refused to submit to Glen were imprisoned there. Furthermore, this dungeon is heavily guarded. I've heard that the dungeon's door is built with the most advanced technology. Even if heavy weapons like tanks or cannons were to bombard the dungeon's door would still be as sturdy as iron. It's rumored that it's impossible to escape from the dungeon. Because there were many checkpoints set up in this dungeon, even top international figures could only escape a short distance if they wanted to. Rumor has it that since the construction of the dungeon, no one has ever succeeded in escaping. Chapter 1435. Glenn's base camp covered a very large area. Glenn had originally built a dungeon here. This was not a secret but something that everyone knew. And Zhengliang had never thought that they would really be able to enter Glenn's base camp. He had already prepared to retreat in the fastest way if he was exposed. No matter what, as the team leader, he had to protect his team members as well as the two little girls from Min City's military academy. Even if he had to sacrifice his life, he had to protect them. However, and Zhengliang had never thought that they would really enter Glenn's base camp in just 10 minutes. As for the dungeon in Glenn's base camp, this was not a big secret. It was something that anyone with a little fame in the international circle knew about. Even if he didn't have any fame, he wouldn't be afraid that no one would tell him about it if he inquired about it internationally. The dungeon in Glenn's base camp was guarded by a forest. It was even more difficult than entering Glenn's base camp. In the dungeon, other than the most high-tech door installed at the entrance, there were also heavy guards inside. Not even a fly could fly out. It was said that the most powerful one had escaped from the dungeon cell to the entrance and almost succeeded in escaping. In the end, because he couldn't crack the password to open the door, he was shot to death by a large wave of guards armed with machine guns. Hearing in Zhengliang's words, Black Sister, Yu Xiaoluo, the two special forces soldiers standing around, and the members of Interpol all had gloomy expressions. Captain, according to what you said, no one who entered that place has ever successfully escaped from prison. If our people who were captured and imprisoned are really there, then wouldn't we not even have a 0.1% chance of winning? Black Sister's face stiffened as she asked. Although this was an indisputable fact, and Zhengliang couldn't bear to say it when he saw everyone staring at him in unison. However, in the end he still nodded. That dungeon was built a little earlier than Glenn became the boss of the underground black market in Europe and America. It is said that Glenn doesn't like to kill people. He likes to imprison all the agents who assassinate him in the dungeon and then let them fight on their own. That dungeon should be a place where the winner is the king. A place where the winner is the king. This also meant that in the dungeon, the weak and the strong, if the strong wanted to kill the weak, they didn't need anyone's permission. In that case, wouldn't Gu Junjian be in danger? Let's go. Yun Jian stood up and walked out. Yun Jian, don't go, we. Yu Xiaoluo had just stood up and followed Yun Jian out of the staircase when he saw a group of people standing in front of the staircase. Wasn't the person in the middle of this group the famous Glenn? At this moment, Glenn was looking at Yun Jian and Yu Xiaoluo as if they were prey and, downstairs. Glenn's appearance was very ordinary. His hair was very short and he was not tall. He was a very ordinary old man about 50 or 60 years old. Seeing Glenn standing there quietly with a group of people, Yu Xiaoluo's heart almost jumped out of his chest. It was as if a ghost had suddenly appeared. Hey you guys. Seeing Yun Jian and Yu Xiaoluo walk out of the staircase, and Zhengliang, Blackie and the others followed. The two groups of people looked at each other. When they saw Glenn and Zhengliang, Blackie and the others turned pale with fright. At this moment, Glenn suddenly laughed out loud and waved his hand. My prey, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Laughing loudly, Glenn's subordinates took a large bottle of spray and sprayed it at Yun Jian and the others. The people who were sprayed quickly fainted. Glenn's group was already prepared, so they naturally wouldn't be stunned by their own spray. No one saw the smile on Yun Jian's face before she fainted. Chapter 1436. In the haze, everyone fainted. Before they fainted, the people who were frightened by Glenn's sudden appearance only had one thought: it's over. Glenn had a strange habit. He liked to watch people kill each other and not be easily killed by his own shot. Therefore he built the dungeon to watch this group of people fend for themselves. The dungeon held all agents, assassins or black market forces from all over the world. Those people were all demons who killed without batting an eyelid. They knew the way of survival and were used to killing to increase their vanity. In that place the king of killing was the ruler. Yun Jian woke up early. She leaned against one of the prison walls and closed her eyes. F***CK get moving? Like a corpse. D*MNB*TCH. I won't F*** you until you cry. A howl came from the side. Without opening her eyes, she knew that a man was forcing himself on a woman. The prison Yun Jian was in was very big. It was about the size of 5 classrooms. Moreover, it was full of people. Men and women were mixed together. Here there was no distinction between men and women. If a woman was too weak, she would become a tool for men to vent. Yun Jian opened her eyes and saw Mu Ying and Jingliang, Black Sister, Yu Xiaoluo and the others. Looking to the side, there was Gu Junjian, whom she had not seen for a long time, and Gu Yunjian's teammates who were caught here with him. Yun Jian, you're finally awake. Yu Xiaoluo heaved a sigh of relief. Yun Jian had actually woken up a long time ago, or it could be said that she had not fainted. Only then did she stand up. From the beginning she had already figured out everything. After Gu Junjian and his teammates sneaked into Glenn's base and were discovered, they were locked up in the dungeon. In the dungeon, other than women who were not strong enough and became slaves for men to vent, the newcomers would be beaten up by the old people in the dungeon. Some of them would even die. The reason why Yun Jian and the others were fine and Gu Junjian was not killed was because Gu Junjian and the others had a very strong teammate, so no one dared to bully them. While Yun Jian was unconscious, the third corpse had already been moved out of the dungeon. Those were the corpses of the weak. What should we do? In this kind of place we will be killed sooner or later. Blackie asked with a pale face. Gu Junjian had a very strong teammate named Lin Wei. The reason why Yun Jian and the others weren't challenged by those lunatics in the dungeon was because of Lin Wei. But now, Lin Wei was already covered in injuries from fighting with that group of people. He couldn't hold on any longer. In a place like this, there were only people who were beaten to death. Even a very powerful person would die from exhaustion or infection of their wounds after challenging one expert after another. This was the dungeon. Anyone who entered would die without a doubt. Yun Jian knew this, but she acted as if nothing had happened. Her goal had been achieved. She had found Gu Junjian. At this moment, a group of men suddenly walked over. This group of men walked in front of Yun Jian and the others, looked at Yun Jian, Mu Ying and Blackie and then said with an evil smile, "Yo yo yo, 3 chicks have come. You know the rules here, right? The chicks have to be given to our boss to enjoy. How about it, you guys should obediently hand them over, This person smiled very wretchedly. The boss he spoke of was the most powerful person in this dungeon. Hearing this person's words, Gu Junjian didn't even care about being afraid. He directly protected Yun Jian and the other 2 behind him. F***CK, you don't want to? Haha, that way of yours is about to die. Let's see who can save you this time. Before the man could finish, Yun Jian pulled Gu Junjian, who was standing in front of her, away. She squinted her eyes and licked her lips as she looked at the people in front of her. Her melodious voice stood out as she spoke in an insolent tone that shocked everyone. Call your trashy boss over. Today I'll show him what the real way to survive in the underground world is. I will show him who is the real powerhouse. No one knew the world of the underground black market better than her. Chapter 1437. Yun Jian's words stunned the men standing in front of her. It was obvious that Yun Jian, who was only 16 or 17 years old, was able to say something like that despite her youthful looks. Not only were the men standing opposite of Yun Jian shocked, but Yu Xiaoluo and Jingliang, Hei Mei and the rest were equally shocked. It even attracted the attention of all the prisoners sitting around the dungeon. Gu Junjian was the only one who knew the reason why Yun Jian dared to say that. Gu Junjian was aware of Yun Jian's identity as slaying God. However, when he saw the men having designs on Yun Jian and the other 2 girls, Gu Junjian had forgotten about Yun Jian's identity. He had stood up to protect her out of reflex. Yo yo yo. Is this chick challenging our prison boss? Right after Yun Jian finished speaking, an indecent male voice was heard. It was the man who was watching the show. Hee, this chick has a death wish. How dare she call the prison boss trash? She doesn't know our prison boss's identity before he was sent to the dungeon. Before he was sent to the dungeon he was Martial King, ranked 10th on the International Assassin chart. If we weren't trapped here, we wouldn't even have the chance to meet Martial King who's ranked on the International Assassin chart. Another male voice sounded. This voice was as lazy as it could be. Most of the people here had the mentality of, I won't be able to get out of the dungeon anyway. They were here to drag out an ignoble existence and live as long as they could. There was nothing to talk about, so the people here liked to talk about their past deeds outside. And Zhengliang, He Mei, Yu Xiaoluo, and the rest looked worried when they heard that the prison boss was once ranked on the International Assassin chart. Even Lin Wei, who had accepted all sorts of challenges from the people in the prison over the past few days and was the strongest among them, could not stand up anymore. His eyelids twitched and his eyes were filled with despair. The title of prison boss was not for nothing. The number of people Martial King had killed in the prison all these years was immeasurable. No one in the prison disagreed with his identity as the prison boss, because the Martial King's fist was hard enough. King Wu? Yun Jian narrowed her eyes slightly when she heard this name. The Martial King, who ranked 10th on the International Assassin rankings, had lived for even longer than Yun Jian's debut, but Yun Jian had indeed heard of the Martial King's name. Unfortunately, many years ago, the Martial King disappeared into thin air as if he had evaporated into thin air. There was an unwritten rule in the international ranking of assassins and secret agents. Assassins or secret agents who disappeared for half a year were automatically considered dead. Naturally, someone else would take their place. It turned out that the Martial King was not dead, but imprisoned in the dungeon. No wonder King Wu went missing. Yun Jian's eyes flickered. The men who had been calling the Martial King boss earlier thought that Yun Jian was afraid. They looked at Yun Jian and spoke again, their voices filled with arrogance and pride. That's right. The Martial King who was ranked 10th on the assassin rankings was our boss. Little sister, are you scared now? If you're scared, then come over obediently or else. Just as these men spoke up to this point, a figure suddenly flitted past in front of them. Yun Jian sent them flying with a few kicks, then grabbed the collar of the man who had been speaking rudely just now and dragged him away. Gu Junjian, Yu Xiaoluo and the others were stunned when they saw this, but they quickly followed. In a corner, a man had just gotten up from an unconscious woman. He pulled his belt and was just about to leave when a heavy figure was thrown in front of him. This man was the Martial King. And the figure thrown on the ground was the man who had spoken rudely to Yun Jian just now. The Martial King abruptly raised his head. When he saw Yun Jian, his brows furrowed slightly. Who are you? The Martial King's vigilance was still very high. He looked at Yun Jian and immediately asked. Although this little girl was young from her appearance, she was not an ordinary person. Not long after the Martial King asked, Yun Jian's equally arrogant words were heard. Chapter 1438. Gu Junjian and Mu Ying, who were the first to rush up, were not surprised when they heard Yun Jian's words. After all, the two of them already knew about Yun Jian's identity. However, and Jingliang, Black Sister, and the others who caught up from behind as well as Lin Wei who was being supported and beaten to the brink of death, were all stunned when they heard Yun Jian's words. Yun Jian. What did she say? Not only did she say that King Wu was a trash boss, but now she wants King Wu to give up his position as the prison's boss? Black Sister didn't like Yun Jian very much when she appeared, because in Black Sister's eyes, Yun Jian was here to cause trouble. Now she disliked Yun Jian even more. Lin Wei was the strongest in their group, and the only reason why the people in the prison didn't bully him was because Lin Wei was still alive. However, there were still a lot of people who were eyeing Lin Wei covetously, waiting for Lin Wei to die before rushing up to make things difficult for Gu Junjian and the others. Probably because the people here were locked up for a long time without seeing the light, the only thing left in their world was killing. King Wu, who was standing opposite Yun Jian, stretched out his thumb and rubbed his nose. His ugly face was full of red pimples, and it looked like he had overindulged in debauchery. In the past few years, the only person who dared to challenge me was you, little girl. King Wu rubbed his hands and said this sentence in a strange tone. It was obvious that King Wu was now very unhappy with Yun Jian's actions. The evil aura emitted from King Wu's body made Lin Wei tremble. But now, Lin Wei was the strongest against King Wu's words. At that time, he fought with King Wu once and was defeated. If they were to go against King Wu, however, King Wu didn't kill him. All of them would die. Everyone in the prison knew that King Wu liked to torture people slowly, but she ignored them. When people were tired or he wanted to make a move, he would kill them. In the next breath, later, before King Wu lifted her leg and ran towards King and the others, Yun Jian made the first move. What a pity! King Wu saw this and couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Not only will I be the only person who challenged you in all these years, but I will also be the executioner who ends your life. King Wu didn't raise his guard at all. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Just as he was about to raise his hand, she wasn't scared by King Wu's aura. Yun Jian was already in front of King Wu. Instead, she suddenly became fierce, and a butterfly knife appeared in her hand. A 16 or 17-year-old girl had just said something that many of the men present didn't dare to say. King Wu died on the spot. They didn't even dare to let out a fart. In a battle between experts, everyone present was stunned. Defeat was decided in one move. Go crazy after realizing that she couldn't go out? She saw this scene. Was she stupid? After King Wu fell to the ground and died before he could even utter his last words, Yun Jian scanned the crowd and said with a red smile, "Sister ground her teeth." You're right. Using a voice that was equivalent to a warning to speak these words very softly from her mouth. Yun Jian bent down and pulled out the butterfly knife from King Wu's neck. Died to dies, Yun, as always to death. Chapter 1439. Yun Jian's attack was so fast that no one had a chance to react. King Wu was a very powerful person, so powerful that even Yun Jian had to maintain full vigilance. However, in the eyes of outsiders, the battle between Yun Jian and King Wu was only a matter of 10 seconds. In these short 10 seconds, he had already come up with dozens of battle plans in his mind in a battle between two experts. In a battle between experts, every move was fatal. Yun Jian had shown her flaws to King Wu. King Wu clearly thought that she had some ability, but she was still too young, so King Wu did not raise his guard from the beginning. King Wu was an assassin, so his vigilance should not have been so weak. However, Yun Jian had guessed it in advance. Especially the words that the martial king himself had said. King Wu said that in the past few years she was the only person who dared to challenge him. This meant that King Wu had been in the position of prison boss for a long time and had not met an opponent for a few years. Perhaps King Wu used to be very powerful, so powerful that it was amazing. Yun Jian had never met King Wu, but she had heard of his name. King Wu, who was ranked 10th on the International Assassin rankings. His strength was comparable to the 4th on the International Assassin rankings. His ranking was just a little lower. In the past, King Wu was very strong, but after staying in prison for so many years, the current King Wu did not work hard in such a cruel world and had gradually lost his edge. Coupled with King Wu's own words, he had not met an opponent who could fight him for so many years. A kind of numbness appeared in his heart, and he felt that no one was as good as him. This was the key to Yun Jian's victory over King Wu in one move. She could read people's minds. Therefore, in terms of opponents, if their opponents were too weak, they would gradually relax and feel that they were already strong enough. They would no longer work hard or fight for anything. However, they did not know that they were just frogs at the bottom of a well. They were stuck in the same place while others were working hard to the peak. For example, in school sports and running competitions, if the opponents in the same group were too weak, then the results of the entire group would not be too high. Perhaps they were already complacent, but compared to the people in the other groups, they were lagging by a lot. Yun Jian understood this a long time ago, so she never wanted her opponents to be too weak. She even wanted to go to more dangerous places to challenge herself. Because only by tempering oneself and walking on the edge of life and death could one become the ultimate king. In the eyes of outsiders, Yun Jian's action of killing King Wu looked like she had easily killed King Wu with a single move. Therefore, the surrounding people were dumbfounded. Especially the black-haired girl who had just said that Yun Jian wanted to kill them. Now, the black-haired girl's face was terrifyingly dark. Inside the prison, the people who were originally sitting lazily and watching the show all stood up at this moment. The martial king had dominated the prison for a long time. It could be said that he had never met a worthy opponent in all these years. Therefore, the people in the prison were already numb, thinking that no one would be able to kill the martial king in this lifetime. But no one expected that the person who killed the martial king would come. Furthermore, she was an underage girl. For a moment, everyone was dumbfounded. Yun Jian. Yu Xiaoluo gulped. He took a long time to call out Yun Jian's name. In the end, he could not say anything. Although Gu Junjian already knew Yun Jian's identity, the moment Yun Jian rushed up, he still broke out in a cold sweat for Yun Jian. Now that he saw that Yun Jian was safe, Gu Junjian felt a sense of relief. At this moment, Yun Jian walked up to Gu Junjian and the others. She wiped the blood off the butterfly knife, then put it away. She stood in front of Gu Junjian and the others and said generously, "All right, I can go now." Go where? Yu Xiaoluo did not understand, but he was the first to react. At this moment, Yun Jian had already walked to the door of the prison cell. Yun Jian, are you thinking of breaking out of the prison? Yu Xiaoluo said in horror. At this moment, the people around the prison turned their gazes over. Chapter 1440. A small and broken prison? This is a small and broken prison? The people present were shocked by Yun Jian's words. A small and broken prison? Little girl, we admit your strength, but you actually said that this is a small and broken prison? The prison in our dungeon is as strong as iron. Not to mention the entrance of the dungeon, even the prison's cage has a password lock installed. It's a system device. If you want to open the door, you have to use Glenn's fingerprints to open the cage. In addition to the prison's cage, you have to go all the way to the dungeon's entrance. The dungeon's entrance also requires Glenn's fingerprints to unlock the password lock. Here there are 2 thresholds. Not to mention the guards that were patrolling the area. Moreover, if we casually touch the password lock, the alarm system will immediately be pulled. We will be caught before we can even start to escape. I've been here for more than 10 years and have long given up hope of leaving. You may not know, but the prison boss who was earlier than the martial king was a terrifying guy who was 10 times more powerful than the martial king. Back then, the martial king was only enough to be the underling of that prison boss. In the end, that terrifying guy escaped and broke through the password lock of the prison's cage. He broke through all the obstacles and had already reached the entrance of the dungeon. However, because he couldn't unlock the password lock at the entrance of the dungeon, he was directly shot to death by the guards who chased after him with a machine gun. That's why the martial king was able to become our prison boss. Little girl, I think you're quite young, so don't do stupid things. Hey. Back then, I was also a warrior who served the country and the people. In the end, I was still locked up here and one of my hands was crippled. However, I'm already very satisfied to be able to save this rotten life of mine. Just as Yun Jian was about to take action, a man in his 50s with long hair, who probably hadn't cut it for many years, sitting in the corner, raised his head to look at Yun Jian and kindly reminded her. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't have said so many words of advice to Yun Jian. After all, just like the previous prison boss, the martial king, if someone questioned his ability in front of everyone according to the martial king's character, he would guarantee to kill the person who questioned his ability at the first moment. The words of this man with long hair in his 50s made Yun Jian narrow her eyes, and made An Jingliang, Black Sister and the others turn pale with fright. First of all, it can be confirmed that the terrifying guy that this man was definitely the one An Jingliang mentioned before, the one who escaped the farthest and was shot to death by a machine gun because he couldn't unlock the password lock at the entrance of the dungeon? However, everyone didn't expect that person to be 10 times more powerful than the martial king. If that was the case, would Yun Jian not have an even lower chance of winning? Wanting to escape, that was simply courting death. Escaping prison, that is death. Yun Jian, don't drag us into your mess. I've been putting up with you for a long time. You've been causing trouble for us since the beginning. Look what you've done now. We're all going to die here. Then do you know how to unlock the password lock? Have you ever thought that if you escape, you will be like the previous boss who was shot to death by a machine gun because he couldn't unlock the password lock? Don't make trouble for us, we. Black Sister clenched her fists and made a gesture of tolerating Yun Jian for a long time. Gotcha. However, before Black Sister finished speaking, the sound of a lock being unlocked was heard. Black Sister and the others turned their heads in surprise, only to see that Yun Jian had already unlocked the password lock in her hand. Chapter 1441. Careless? He accidentally unlocked the password lock? Everyone was stunned. In front of the prison cage was a door with a password lock. This password lock was monitored by a computer program. Unless Glenn pressed his finger and fingerprint on the top of the password lock could not be unlocked. Otherwise, if someone reached out and pressed 3 buttons on the password lock would sound an alarm. If someone tried to escape, the guards in the prison would immediately know and rush over. Normally, if the alarm did not sound, there would be no guards patrolling here. Because without the password lock, the prison cage was extremely stable. Even if it was bombarded with cannons, it would not be able to blow it open. The cage of the prison was only a little worse than the entrance of the dungeon, so Glenn had no intention of sending anyone to guard this place. This was because if someone wanted to escape, they would touch the combination lock. Once the combination lock was touched, a loud alarm would sound. In this way, the guards would immediately know and rush over. If they did not touch the password lock, the people here would not be able to break the cage at all, nor would they be able to get out. The terrifying fellow who had escaped to the entrance of the dungeon was already the most powerful one among all the prisoners in the dungeon who had escaped. Even he had to spend a few months before he was able to crack the combination lock. Most people had not even stepped out of the prison cage before they were discovered because they had touched the password lock and sounded the alarm. There was an unwritten rule in the dungeon, and that was, once someone was found to have escaped from prison, they would be shot on the spot. Therefore, there were many people who had died trying to escape from prison over the years. Over time, the people here did not dare to take the risk of escaping from prison. But what happened today? Black Sis had just finished speaking, and before she could finish speaking, Yun Jian had already unlocked the password lock? Yun Jian. At this moment, Black Sis had just recovered from the shock of Yun Jian killing the martial king. In the end, she had just opened her mouth to say something righteous when Yun Jian ruthlessly slapped her in front of everyone. This time, Black Sis's face really darkened. Originally it was not black, but it had really turned black. I won't force you to break out of prison with me. Now, those who are willing to come with me, those who aren't can stay. Also, if any accidents happen during the escape, I won't be responsible because I can still leave without you. Yun Jian looked at everyone in the prison. She reached out and shook the password lock in her hand. In the next moment, she threw the password lock in her hand to the ground. However, she curled her red lips. Although she said that, Yun Jian glanced at Gu Junjian. She was here to save Gu Junjian. As for why she invited others, it was because she was not alone. She wanted to bring Gu Junjian out. The more people, the safer Gu Junjian. Even if the guards were to catch up, Gu Junjian would not be the first to die. Don't blame her, Yun Jian, for being cruel. This was the way of survival. To achieve one's goal by hook or by crook, this was the principle of being a secret agent. She, Yun Jian, was never a good person and had never admitted that she was. I'll go with you. The man in his 50s who kindly reminded Yun Jian just now stood up and spoke first. His hair was very long because it had been a long time since he had trimmed it. I don't want to stay here anymore. Instead of staying here for the rest of my life, I might as well fight for my freedom. Even if I die, I won't regret it. My name is Wei Gear, a police officer from Country Y. I'll go with you. The man who called himself Wei Gear looked at Yun Jian and spoke. Those who want to go, follow me. Those who don't, I won't force you. Yun Jian curled her lips. She did not answer Wei Gear. Instead, she curled her red lips. It was obvious that Yun Jian was not going to say welcome. Other than Wei Gear, Gu Junjian, Mu Ying, Yu Xiaoluo, Lin Wei, He Mei, and Jing Liang, and the rest, there were also a few people who followed Yun Jian. Soon, under Yun Jian's lead, the few of them made countless turns and arrived at a fork. There were 2 guards standing in front of the fork, each holding a machine gun in their hands. Yun Jian waved her hand to signal for everyone to stop. Then she bit on an unused butterfly knife in her mouth and rolled towards the 2 guards. What shocked He Mei Yu Xiaoluo, and the rest was that Yun Jian rolled on the ground and arrived in front of the 2 guards. Logically speaking, in such a quiet environment, this roll should have made some noise. However, the strange thing was that Yun Jian's roll did not make any noise at all. Yun Jian was not human at all, this supernatural thing. Chapter 1442. Yun Jian silently rolled to the side of the 2 guards. She did not reach for the butterfly knife in her mouth. Instead, she stood behind the 2 guards. Because the dungeon was built in the basement, there was no light all year round. They could only rely on electric lights to light up the passageway. Although Yun Jian's movements were silent, when the light shone on the ground, they could see her figure. The 2 guards originally had their backs facing Yun Jian. When they suddenly saw that under the light, other than their own shadows, there was another small shadow on the ground in front of them. They were immediately shocked. After all, if someone approached them in such a quiet place, they would definitely make some noise. Moreover, the 2 guards knew very well that if someone wanted to escape from the prison cell, they had to crack the password lock. If the password lock could not be cracked by pressing it 3 times, the alarm would immediately be sounded. The only person who could crack the password lock was the terrifying person who had escaped to the entrance of the dungeon and was shot to death by the guards with a machine gun. Therefore, these 2 guards were not on high alert to begin with. After trembling violently, the 2 guards wanted to turn around as if they had seen a ghost. Gu Junjian and Jingliang He Mei Yu Xiaoluo, and the others who were hiding in the corner were terrified. The 2 guards turned around. Just as the guards turned around, however, they saw that Yun Jian and Gu Junjian and the others who had peeked their heads out from the corner had already left the cell. The guards were about to cry out in shock when they heard Yun Jian's voice. Yun Jian, who was standing in front of the 2 guards, suddenly reached into her pocket and took out 2 pieces of paper that were rolled into a circle. The 2 guards were shocked that Yun Jian and the others had escaped from the prison and were about to scream. She took out the paper towels with both hands and stuffed them into the 2 guards' mouths before they could make a sound. Then Yun Jian grabbed the 2 guards' jackets and used their own jackets to completely tie them up. Yun Jian then held the butterfly knife that was biting her lips in her hand. He Mei suddenly came to her senses. She pressed the butterfly knife against the neck of one of the guards and called Gu Junjian and the others who were hiding in the corner to come over. Now made her seem stupid. Gu Junjian and the others walked over very carefully. Straight at the guard. There were only 2 guards nearby, but the guard shook his head carefully in order to prevent any accidents. He even tried to knock on the ground with his feet to ask for help. Why are you wasting time here? It was a pity that Yun Jian stabbed the guard's temple just as he was about to flee. Yun Jian ignored He Mei. With a muffled groan, she lowered her head and looked at the 2 guards. Seeing the blood splatter, she whispered to the guard whose neck she was pressing. Even Lin Wei, who was stronger, couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He Mei was a little angry that Yun Jian complained in a low voice and was wasting time here. This little girl is quite fierce. Before he finished, Yun Jian had already pulled out the butterfly knife and planned to stab the other guard's temple. When the other guard saw this, he shook his head and began to mumble. Seeing that the plan was successful, Yun Jian's red arc curved and she said, "Lead the way." The guard immediately nodded. Yun Jian stood up and waved her hand to let Gu Junjian and the others hold the guard hostage. Generally, the guards in the dungeon were strictly trained, and they would definitely not betray Glenn after being caught by the enemy for a while. It would take months of torture to force the hostages to submit, but Yun Jian only used a few seconds to make the guards submit obediently. And Zhengliang, He Mei, Lin Wei, Wei Gear and the others were stunned. Chapter 1443. The second one to follow was Mu Ying. She was holding a shiny pistol in her hand. Those who didn't know would wonder where she got the gun from, but Lin Wei saw it clearly just now. Mu Ying's gun was snatched from a prisoner who secretly hid a pistol when she was still in prison. Not only did Mu Ying snatch the pistol, she also knocked the prisoner unconscious. Because Yun Jian was too outstanding at that time, the people around them didn't notice Mu Ying's actions. Lin Wei was considered the strongest in the group, but because he was challenged every day in prison, and it was the kind of battle where one's life or death would be at stake if he wasn't careful, Lin Wei was in a very sorry state at the moment. He was covered in injuries and had to rely on the help of 2 other Special Forces soldiers to walk forward. However, Lin Wei was the only one who saw Mu Ying snatch the pistol, and he was shocked at that time. He was only able to save his life in prison. However, Yun Jian and Mu Ying, these 2 female students from Min City's military school, one killed the prison boss directly, and the other snatched a pistol in prison. If it were him, Lin Wei wouldn't even dare to do that. It was already good enough that he could save his own life in prison. not to mention anything else. Therefore Yun Jian and Mu Ying's actions frightened Lin Wei. His soul returned to reality. Yun Jian walked in front and Mu Ying was the second to follow. Seeing this, Gu Junjian and Jing who grabbed the guard, carried him and quickly followed Yun Jian. He Mei, Lin Wei, Wei Gear and the others were at the bottom. Under the guard's hand gestures, the group of people moved toward the dungeon gate. They went through countless turns along the way. Perhaps the guard was afraid of death, so he led the way and they didn't meet anyone else. We're here. That's the dungeon gate. Wei Gear, who was walking at the back, saw the dungeon gate. He said in a muffled voice, but he was so excited that he wanted to scream. In the end, Wei Gear calmed himself down. How many years had it been? Weigel was a glorious criminal police officer. When he failed to assassinate Glenn and was locked up in the dungeon, he even felt that it was better to die than to lose his freedom. When one of his hands was crippled in the dungeon, Weigel had already planned to die. No one had ever escaped from this dungeon. Even that terrifying character who was 10 times more powerful than the Martial King was unable to leave this place. Not to mention them. However, Weigel gave up on death because his good comrade who had been imprisoned with him had died for him. Before he died, he had shouted at him, "You must live on." Even that terrifying figure could only escape to the entrance of the dungeon, but they actually managed to do it. Wei Gear was excited. At the same time, he was 100% certain about Yun Jian's strength. This little girl's strength was definitely not inferior to that terrifying figure from back then. Perhaps they could really leave this place. They soon arrived at the entrance of the dungeon. There was a password lock hanging above the entrance. This password lock was even more complicated than the password lock in the prison back then. Ordinary people would not be able to understand the program on this password lock. Yun Jian quickly unlocked it. Blackie said excitedly. At the same time, her heart clenched tightly. It's too late. They're coming. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. She looked ahead the way they came. However, she saw that directly opposite the dungeon, a large group of fully armed guards rushed in front of Yun Jian and the others. Each of them carried a machine gun in their hands. How did they discover us? Blackie was so scared that her legs instantly trembled. The few people present immediately recalled that this was where that terrifying figure was shot to death by the guards' machine guns. After so many years, the scene from back then had reappeared once again. Yun Jian wanted to unlock the password lock on this side of the dungeon. Naturally, she would need more time than the prison. And now the guards were all holding machine guns in their hands. The muzzles were pointed at everyone present. That's how that terrifying figure died back then. We've been discovered. It's over. It's really over. Wei Gear was paralyzed on the ground as he said these words. With me here, do they really think that these few machine guns can stop us from leaving this place? Yun Jian smirked and laughed coldly. Forget about machine guns. Someone once tried to bombard her with cannons and she easily dodged it. She did not care about these few machine guns at all. Yun Jian's words were just normal words in her eyes. However, in the ears of Blackie, Wei Gear, Lin Wei and the others, these words had a very different meaning. Humans against machine guns could still survive. This was the first time they heard such a statement. Without a doubt, they were very suspicious of Yun Jian's words. Even Gu Junjian looked worried. Chapter 1444. The group of guards did not say a word. They raised their machine guns and were about to fire. Yun Jian did not say anything. However, she had already noticed that there was a surveillance camera right above the entrance of the dungeon. There were also surveillance cameras along the way. However, the path they took earlier was the only way. There was no other way. Or to put it another way, Yun Jian knew from the start that the guards had purposely led them here. At this moment, the group of guards had already raised their machine guns. Mu Ying, take them away. Just as the group of guards were still loading their machine guns and were about to point their machine guns at Yun Jian and the rest, Yun Jian shouted. She grabbed the guard who was in front of Gu Junjian and the rest and rushed towards the group of guards. This scene almost made Jingliang, Wei Gear and the rest go crazy. Lin Wei frowned and then shouted at the figure that Yun Jian was rushing towards, "Young lady, come back. You'll die." She was going to face the group of guards with machine guns alone. Did she want to die? Lin Wei was purely concerned about Yun Jian. Hence, he reached out to grab the corner of Yun Jian's clothes. However, he did not expect Yun Jian's reaction to be so fast. She grabbed the guard who was holding her hostage. She could still run so fast while holding a person. In the blink of an eye, Yun Jian was already about 5 to 6 meters away from the group of guards with machine guns. Seeing Yun Jian rush over, The group of guards originally planned to deal with Gu Junjian and the rest who were around Yun Jian first before dealing with Yun Jian. However, because of Yun Jian's sudden rush, she was already in front of them. When the guards saw this, they immediately turned their machine guns that were aimed at Gu Junjian and the rest to Yun Jian, who was rushing towards the group of guards. All the machine guns were aimed at Yun Jian alone. She had lured the machine guns away for Gu Junjian and the rest, taking on the barrage of bullets alone. She was going to die for sure. Even Gu Junjian, who had always been confident in Yun Jian and knew of her identity, shouted at Yun Jian, "Xiao Jian, come back. It's dangerous." Gu Junjian shouted as he chased after Yun Jian. Before Gu Junjian could go after her, however, Gu Junjian and Zhengliang, Blackie Mei, and the rest who were standing where they were saw a frightening scene. Yun Jian did not even turn back as she rushed over. Some of the guards who were armed with machine guns had already loaded their guns and aimed them at Yun Jian. Bang 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 bang. Gunshots rang out one after another. Yun Jian dragged the guard who led the way just now and placed him in front of her like a meat wall. The bullets from the machine guns hit the guard hard. The guard's eyes were still wide open before he died. As he could not make a sound, he grunted twice before he died in terror. Yun Jian did not stop dragging the guard's corpse. The machine guns in the guard's hands could penetrate a person's body. After the gun hit the guard in Yun Jian's hand, it paused for a second before it went through Yun Jian, who was behind her. If it was anyone else in Yun Jian's position, they would probably be dead now. However, for Yun Jian this pause was enough. The moment the machine guns in the guard's hands stopped firing, Yun Jian threw away the guard's corpse in her hand. She jumped to the side. She had already arrived in front of one of the guards. In the next moment, Yun Jian used her elbow to smash the neck of the nearest guard standing in front of her. With one smash she broke the guard's neck. At the same time she snatched the machine gun from the guard whose neck she broke first. She did not even think about it. She grabbed the machine gun and swept it at the guards around her. She fired as she ran. A large number of the guards immediately fell. However, those who were still alive would still attack Yun Jian. Yun Jian dodged the bullets as she fought back against the guards. That nimble figure seemed to be very familiar with this kind of battlefield filled with bullets. He was like a general who had survived a battle of life and death. And Zhengliang, Blackie and the others who were in the distance stared with wide eyes. They watched as Yun Jian finished off the last guard. Then she threw the machine gun in her hand to the ground and walked back to them. There was no trace of blood on her body. However, her entire body reeked of gunpowder. The moment she turned around and walked over, her high ponytail swayed left and right. At that moment, everyone was in a daze. Chapter 1445. The battle only lasted for 3 minutes. Within those 3 minutes, Yun Jian executed hundreds of moves. Every move and movement was not allowed to deviate by even a millimeter. Everyone who stood rooted to the spot was stunned for 3 whole minutes. Even Mu Ying's eyes flashed with surprise. She was only about 9 years old when she died. She was dead, but Yun Jian was still alive, and Yun Jian continued to train her skills in the organization. After Mu Ying took on this body, she had been practicing martial arts with her parents since she was born into a military family. She was very hardworking and had the experience of being in an assassin organization. Mu Ying's skills were not to be underestimated. Compared to Yun Jian, who grew up in the organization, however, the difference was like heaven and earth. Even Mu Ying could not help but marvel at Yun Jian's ability. If it had been her just now, she would have had no chance of winning. In spite of it, not only did Yun Jian succeed, she did not even have a scratch on her. It was like she was so familiar with the scene just now that she could do it with her eyes closed. You. How did you? Miss Blackie's eyes were about to fall out of their sockets when she saw Yun Jian coming back from the other side. After all, that terrifying fellow had died under the machine guns of the guards. That guy who was 10 times more powerful than Marshal King could not dodge the machine gun attack. He could not escape death. What about Yun Jian? She was from Min City's military school, a kid who had just entered high school, but she had dodged it. This scene caused everyone to be shocked, stunned, and terrified. When Miss Blackie stuttered to Yun Jian was already in front of them. There'll be a new wave of guards coming here in 10 minutes. I can't guarantee that they'll point their guns at me every time, so we have to leave now. Yun Jian explained quickly as she stood in front of the combination lock at the entrance of the dungeon, her fingers tapping on the lock swiftly. Xiao Jian, you were so impulsive just now. What if you missed? Dad knows you have extraordinary skills, but every time I see you taking risks like this, Dad gets worried. Gu Junjian was already used to playing the role of Yun Jian's father. He sighed from the bottom of his heart. He was really worried about Yun Jian. Hearing Gu Yunjian's words, everyone immediately turned to look at Yun Jian. At this moment, everyone wanted to hear Yun Jian's answer. At this moment he heard Yun Jian's voice. Her fingers were still rapidly working on the password lock. She opened her mouth and said, "I'll be fine. You don't have to worry." Such a dangerous move. Even I think it's dangerous. If you make even the slightest mistake, someone will die. Your mother and I are the same. We hope that you can only do other things when you can guarantee your own safety. Gu Junjian frowned and said to Yun Jian, "Okay." Yun Jian nodded. In the end, Yun Jian added, "I've never done anything that puts myself in danger. What I did just now isn't the first time. I'm used to these days where I'm on the brink of death. I can guarantee that I'll be fine, so you don't have to worry." As Yun Jian spoke, the password lock on the dungeon door fell with a click. The door opened. Everyone's eyes lit up in surprise. "Follow me, don't wander off," Yun Jian said calmly as usual. "Yun Jian, let me ask you. We were discovered when we first entered Glen's base. Did you walk out because you knew that Glen and his men were standing outside?" Yu Xiaoluo, who had been silent for a long time, asked Yun Jian. Everyone was surprised by Yu Xiaoluo's sudden question and turned to look at Yun Jian. Yun Jian did not reply. Just when everyone thought that Yun Jian would not reply, Yun Jian suddenly spoke. "Yes, everything is going according to my plan. Moreover, Glen and the others were able to discover our traces because of me. My goal was only to enter the dungeon." Everyone already had a faint premonition about the first sentence, but the second sentence caused everyone to turn pale with fright. The moment they entered Glen's base, they were discovered by Glen and the others. This matter was actually directed and acted by Yun Jian? Chapter 1446. Originally, he thought that he would be discovered as soon as he entered Glen's base camp. Yun Jian's strength was only SOSO. Even though Yun Jian knew the back door of Glen's base camp and brought everyone into Glen's base camp in just 10 minutes, they were discovered not long after. This was also the reason why Black Sister didn't believe in Yun Jian again and questioned Yun Jian's strength. However, Yu Xiaoluo had just asked Yun Jian if she knew that they had been discovered by Glen early on, so she walked out at the bottom of the stairs and was deliberately caught by Glen and the others before being sent to the dungeon. And Yun Jian actually replied that not only was all of this in her plan, even the fact that they were discovered by Glen was all done by Yun Jian on purpose. Yun Jian had deliberately let Glen discover them and capture all of them to the dungeon. Yun Jian, what do you mean by that? You actually let Glen discover our whereabouts and then capture us. The dungeon is such a dangerous place, yet you didn't discuss it with us. You said that Glen would capture us and let us in. Have you ever thought about what if we can't get out after we go in? I can understand that you want to save your father, but you can't let all of us take the risk with you. Just now, all of us were almost killed by you, do you know that? Black Sister suddenly reacted. The reason why they were caught in the dungeon was all because of Yun Jian. When she thought of the scenes in the dungeon, she thought of the former prison boss, Marshal King, who used women as tools to vent his anger. Black Sister had lingering fear in her heart as she immediately spoke to Yun Jian. In my world there is no such word as if. If you say half a word of nonsense, I will kill you right now and let you completely shut your mouth. As Yun Jian spoke, she snatched the pistol from Mu Ying's hand and loaded it with one hand. She directly pressed it against the temple of Black Sister, who was standing beside her and talking non-stop. Yun Jian's eyes did not look at Hei Mei. She frowned slightly and looked straight ahead. The black-haired girl shuddered as the pistol was pressed against her temple. Yun Jian's index finger hooked the pistol. The gun was already loaded. If Yun Jian hooked it gently, her fate would be, in addition. Yun Jian had just snatched the machine gun from the enemy's hands with her bare hands and annihilated all the enemies. She had killed without blinking. Black Sister felt as if she was being stared at by the Grim Reaper. This feeling made her feel suffocated. Hey Yun Jian, don't be violent. Let's talk nicely. And Zhengliang hurried over to stop them. At the same time, he looked pleadingly at Gu Junjian, hoping that Gu Junjian would say a few words for him. Xiao Jian, put the gun down. Gu Junjian chimed in. Just as Gu Junjian spoke, Yun Jian lowered her hand that was pressed against the black-haired girl's temple. The black-haired girl breathed a sigh of relief. Just when everyone thought that Yun Jian had let go because of Gu Yunjian's persuasion, Yun Jian's red arc curled as she chuckled eerily. It's here. What's here? Everyone was baffled when they heard Yun Jian. They had walked out of the dungeon's entrance and were standing right in front of it. Everyone there, other than Mu Ying, was bewildered when they heard Yun Jian's words. Yun Jian tossed the pistol she had snatched from Mu Ying back to Mu Ying before looking around a corner. In the next second she curled her red arc and said, "Glenn, come out. Aren't you tired after watching for so long?" Glenn? Where was Glenn? Everyone tensed up in shock when they heard Yun Jian. Right now, everyone couldn't help but shiver when they heard the word Glenn. "Yun Jian, can you stop scaring us? There's no Glenn here. If he's really here, why hasn't he come out? Otherwise we would have been discovered long ago." Black-haired girl thought that her judgment was correct this time. She had just spoken, but before she could finish her words, clap, clap, clap. A round of applause sounded. In the next second, a short, ordinary-looking old man in his 50s or 60s walked out from the corner that Yun Jian was looking at. Was this old man who exuded a menacing aura not Glenn? Everyone was shocked when they saw him. Glenn spoke abruptly, his words directed at Yun Jian. "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."